you are not immune to propaganda. Like
Right.
that saying is so true. Like it doesn't matter. It's scary too, because it's like at any moment, any information that I receive could be propaganda and I won't even see it. Right?
You can think yourself to be as one with the world. But what does that do for anything?
Nothing.
That's what I'm saying. You're gonna leave me in this existential
Reality
crisis?
affects, it start affecting like what you're hoping for is not gonna.
God,
The
we're
reality
gonna have
is
to do
affecting
another
it.
part on this.
You see, I have to do things in the real world now.
That's
why?
the reality. The question that I want to answer with our discussion about is why is there a grown-ass man out there with millions of followers trying to convince people with dozens of hours of videos that reality is a dream? If you were suddenly right now we were aware of the fact that I don't know, a giant meteor is going towards Earth, and it's going to be here like in 2 years, it's going to be very difficult to forget that, to ignore that information. You're not going to be bliss, no more bliss, because no more ignorance. Hello, hello.
All right,
Welcome.
Come back to the void.
To the void, to the deep fried spoke. To the deep fried spoke. Yeah, maybe we should rename.
Spoke.
Actually, yeah, scratch everything that we've been doing so far.
That's gonna cost you a lot trying to change the name now.
Rebrand deep fried
Denied.
spoke. It's not that bad. It's just a couple letters, but it sounds funny. Deep fried spoke. What did we want to talk about today? I did want to finish that whole topic we started a couple episodes back that we never finished because we
never finish.
Yeah, we never finish. We can't. The pathological non-finishers just keep talking about the tangents, which of course will happen today, but I do want to have the central theme to revolve around that video by actualize.org that we didn't finish reviewing.
Yeah.
We reviewed the first part essentially, and I wanted to see if we can just streamline through part 2 and 3 and the whole thing today, which is kind of a lot, but I think we can do it. I just want to talk mostly about the parts that don't make much sense to me, but a funny thing happened when I was essentially preparing for this episode. I kept kind of revisiting that material on the summaries and just seeing what else we need to talk about there. Ironically, what happened is what Leo from the videos was talking about, is that you need to kind of contemplate that material a lot in order to get it. And the funny thing happened is that I kind of started to get it when I was summarizing it and going over the points, seeing how the logical points connect. So I kind of understood, at least in part, what he was talking about, which is a funny consequence of all of this. But there's still a couple major points that don't really make much sense to me. But I understood one crucial one, which I'll want to see what you think about that once we go over it today. At first, just a summary of what we discussed on that episode, which was episode 18, I believe. So we still agreed on the fact that the claims need to be tested against evidence, lived experience, some kind of practical applications before they can be accepted. Otherwise, people just can say, I am a Jedi who can levitate, and then you should just believe them for no reason. Then we discussed about some of the mystical, spiritual claims that sound profound, but cannot be demonstrated or used in a concrete way, and the fact that, the words do not equal to reality. We both discussed and agreed that rationality matters, but it's not like a complete worldview, because language, subjectivity, context, and consciousness complicate any simple model of truth, which I think was the biggest practical takeaway of that guy's video, which is, that's fine. That's pretty straightforward. But we did talk about propaganda, misinformation, and now AI-generated content as modern threats to truth and what we consider real, essentially, and kind of discussed the epistemic hygiene.
Yeah.
That has been a big
which is
theme for our show, right? It's just that is this bullshit type of segment and approach that we go through. There has been an insight about the fact that people want coherent stories, even though they can be false ones, because ambiguity is psychologically uncomfortable. And that's a
yeah,
big one, I think. That's a really good one because would you rather have like a coherent story? Yes. For most people, they just, unconsciously choose it because it's just feels better than any kind of story or explanation that that has an element of uncertainty to it.
yeah, which is most of reality as we consider it, which is just a messy, jumbled kind of hard to differentiate because you can pick apart any sort of things that you can observe in the world, right? That's part of the whole, and you can't comprehend the entire thing in its entirety, right? And it's just messy like that. So people tend to just pick and choose, like, oh, this is the narrative, this is the thing that's going on, and this explains, this aspect of it, but they just tend to accept that as like, oh, this is the world then, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when you
they disregard everything else.
Yeah, because you can't even how would you even talk about everything, right? Like which part are you talking about, right? So
Right. Yeah, but just exploration and drilling further like this, right? By acknowledging that okay, this is unknown or I don't understand this at the time, but you drill into it. And I don't know, for most people, just you don't really engage in that, right? On a recurring basis. People, for the most part, live in the convenience of the mundane, right? And the safety of that. But
yeah, because also I think it's also partly almost physical in the way that, all these things, let's just say if you try to map the world in any kind of intellectual capacity, is using a lot of brain power, It's actually using a lot of energy to kind of, okay, holding all these things together.
yeah,
And that's
yeah.
not a natural state. Like just as we understand things like electrons
Yeah,
have
it
their
just means that
stable.
you won't be dedicating that energy to other stuff, right?
Yeah, and also not you can't maintain it. Like, yes, you can understand a certain
Well,
topic,
this is
but
where this type of kind of discourse and this is exploration, right? This is intellectual exploration. Like why I am, drilling down into these topics and coming back to them because I'm curious, just for the most part, right? I'm interested in what can be found because essentially, if you update your understanding of the world, you could be living closer to reality, so to say, right? The really good example I was thinking about is a theory of microbes, essentially. There are people still live today in societies that live today that they're not aware of it. That's not in their culture, right? They live somewhere in the jungle and where that's just not the thing, even though it is known for the most part in the world. I think I heard somebody's story who was trying to do some humanitarian work in Africa, and they were telling a tribe to build a concrete wall in the well around the ground essentially. And the people were asking like, why you need to do that? And he was like, well, because you have like your latrine is like 10 meters away. And if you don't do that, you have much more chances of infection and disease and microbes spread into your well. They're like, what's microbes? So that's an
yeah,
example of the reality is that there are microbes, but you're not aware of them and you're not accounting for them in your life. And it's costing you. It's bad because you're much more likely to get sick. So this is an example of why you'd be interested in investigating, just the nature of reality and your assumptions, and because you might just not be aware of something as monumental as microbes existing. So it's slightly different than kind of looking into microscope and seeing like, oh, okay, they're microbes, and we're gonna account for that. But I would argue that it's more important because it's your own assumptions and your own unconscious beliefs that you're not even aware of
yeah,
that are literally shaping your worldview. And kind of that's the biggest part that is the beneficial part of this type of inquiry.
yeah. Because And one way to look at it is that there's always going to be, because human beings, right? Like we manipulate the environment that we're in. By all evidence, we seem to be the one on Earth that has the most capability to manipulate, right? The reality, the environment that we live in. So what happens is, as in with everything that you think about in regard to information, is that there will always going to be somebody who will manipulate that information and using that asymmetrical
Yeah, that's the power,
difference
right?
between knowing and not knowing and arbitrage the difference. So in the way of, in this case, it would be, from, we know this from history and all that, like, how the people can read essentially manipulate people who don't know how to read, right? Back in the day when only the priests can read the Bible, and there's a whole, story in that. But all I'm saying is that as far as we are concerned, as far as we can figure out what's going on with the world, you kind of want to be, basically, it's in your best interest to know as much as you can,
Yeah.
because you can level the playing field, because you minimize the chance that you will be bamboozled by somebody who knows more than you, right? Even though there's almost seems like nobody can really know everything, or is there certain things that we are trying to figure out, and there seem to be this veil that we can't pierce, right? But this is the reason why people have these theories, and which we're dissecting in this instance, right? Is these people are trying to figure, okay, well, what about this? What about some of these things that you witness, that you do see, but then you don't understand, right? We're trying to understand more about the world in this way, in a more, not just more philosophical, but more like, what's the reality? What is the biggest question you can ask? I mean, people have attempted doing this all the time, but if one asks, okay, why do it? Well, this is why. First is the curiosity, but also in the pursuit of doing this, is also very helpful to kind of maintain a sort of equilibrium, let's just say, of equal access to information, essentially, because that way, not only is one protected from, not protected, but you'll be less, propaganda will have less of an, won't get to you as easily. So in that way, you are protecting yourself informational wise, but also that's how you build the basis to understand more about the world. Because if nobody's doing this, then everybody's going to be not knowing, right? Let's just say if we just stop at the level like, okay, you can't know the future, you can't know reality, so don't forget about it. Well, then how are we going to advance, right? The only reason that we advanced as far as we did is because people were curious and asking the question that seemed to be impossible to answer, and continually finding new ways and new avenues, or new theories and stuff. And that way, but you do have to have this kind of thing being almost like you have to kind of reach, maybe not reach a consensus, but like you need to pitch this to other people to think, okay, am I being crazy to think this way, or is there something
Hmm.
to this? Because one mind can't really comprehend everything, right? You can have a theory, but does this theory connect to everything that is necessary to construct something that is basically reflective of the reality that we live in? This is in the field of science, is where we have peer reviews. You want to make sure the thing can be checked out by other people, so you're not just accounting for all the errors that you can, right? So that's why I want to say is just that, yeah, it's part of the pursuit, the benefit, part of this, the kind of the side benefit of that is that you are raising this bar, and so that things can be correlated and checked, right? The higher that you go, the more information you kind of bring it out there, the more you have other people who can criticize it, like what we're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether right or not, we're trying to, okay, you propose this, okay, let me
Yeah,
think
just
about this.
evaluating it,
Does this make
investigating
sense?
it, considering it.
Yeah, so that's the benefit as well. So
And also, it made me think about the fact that essentially we kind of vacillate on our conversations between knowledge is power and ignorance is bliss. Kind of two on the spectrum, it's funny because it's like you can be experiencing both, because Like knowledge definitely brings on a certain responsibility to you, because once you know something, you have to address it in some way. It's going to be kind of tricky. It's going to be difficult on its own to not, to forget about it. It's not like if you suddenly were right now, we were aware of the fact that I don't know, a giant meteor is going towards Earth,
Yeah,
and it's going to be here like in 2 years. It's going to be very difficult to forget that, to ignore that information. You're
yeah,
not going to be bliss, no more bliss, because
yeah.
no more ignorance. And that's very interesting. So there's some tension in there that I want to keep exploring, because some episodes we definitely explored that ignorance is bliss, and just chill, and don't think about it too hard. And in others we're doing stuff like that, like this, like, all right, let's figure out what's going on. But yeah, for me, it's still, there's something about curiosity, the curiosity that is driving this, because these days naturally I'm kind of seeing what I naturally want to do, what I don't want to do. So sometimes I'm listening to an audiobook, and I'm like thinking to myself, why am I kind of reading this book, right? Like, what am I looking for? Because I could just be, out and about. Like today I just went for a walk and I didn't listen to an audiobook or anything like that. And it was just my thoughts and kind of just spacing out. But there's still that impulse or hunger for to learn some kind of something, to learn some kind of new ideas, new insights, and that drive is there. Like I can't dismiss it. I can't stop completely. Like every time I'm trying, like, okay, I'm gonna space out, I do want to go back to some kind of substance, essentially, to some kind of content and ideas and thoughts to mull over. So
Because
I
I
don't know
think
what that impulse is.
that's just human nature, I think. I mean, human are curious because, well, yeah, there's the big question hanging over your head, right? It's like, okay, why though? Like that just comes to you. So, oh, okay, this is what happens, but why though? I mean, you see any, from natural phenomena to like curious kind of processes that happens in the world that you learn about, right? It's just, yeah, like why things happen the way they do. I mean, you want to know because that's kind of part of the drive for you to the more power, the more knowledge you have, the more power you do gain. And with power do comes responsibility, yes, but knowing is better than not knowing because you can prepare when you know, right? Because when you
Right. I also remembered kind of essentially why that process jump starts is because inevitably you still, if you have a bit of time to think or to ruminate, you still go to the question like, oh, what do I want? What do I want to do? With my time, with my effort, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And to decide on any of that, you do need to reorient. You do need to remember, like, what's anything, right? What's important, what it's all for. Even all of that can be just dissolved, you know Like these days, it's very difficult for me to formulate the purpose of certain actions and activities besides just some natural drives. So, like, really, I'm mostly letting some natural drives and curiosities and maybe yearning for some kind of beauty take, take its precedence, like creative drives and stuff like that. But there isn't any kind of bigger, this is what that is supposed to do. There are no ideas that are like borderline delusional, where like, oh, this is going to change the world, or this is going to be popular. Nothing like that. It's mostly just, I feel like this is interesting, or this is cool, and that is coming out. But even that, you know, if you dig deep enough into that, you'll realize, like, yeah, what am I doing? What's it all for? Am I just doing some nonsense? Am I doing things that are wrong? Am I wasting my time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And that's the process where the mind starts to look for some kind of justification or proof or confirmation that it's correct or it's doing something worthwhile. It's part of that process, which is a recurring thing. So it's not like you do it once and forget. It's more like you do it once, gives you some confidence, gives you some orientation, and then you go back to rechecking. Yeah. So it's a
yeah,
recurrent
because
process.
see that's the thing. the problem is when you question sort of the reason why you do certain things, you inevitably, at least for me, inevitably you kind of reach the conclusion, which to me I have established, which is that everything is absurd. So there is no, like, even if I kind of quantify and reasonably form a framework as to why I'm doing a certain thing,
It is just for its own
it's
sake,
still for
essentially,
its
right?
own sake. Yeah, basically, that's for me. That's how I think. It's just that nothing has inherent kind of meaning in that way other than what you kind
Yeah,
of extract
and
it to be.
it's true, and I do feel it these days as well, because I keep thinking about, my life, juxtaposed to like other people that I see in the world, and I'm like, yeah, this is a weird life. Like most people don't live it like that. Most people do all kinds of other things, engage in other kinds of games. But then when I think about what does that matter, yeah, and inevitably just comes back to the fact that when you're more kind of integrated in society, you just play more of society's games, but nothing really makes them more valid other than the fact that just it's more normal, more widespread, more popular, and more of what other people do. But as we established through a lot of our conversations here, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
imagine
just other people do other stuff.
okay. Imagine yourself being a multi-billionaire. I just say you Elon Musk. You're sitting at home and you're bored, and it's like, okay, what else can I do? You see the yes, you have more capabilities to do more things, right? Like he can be launching rockets, trying to get to Mars, and this and that, all that kind of stuff. But if you think about it, okay, that's just a thing that you spend your time on.
That you
That
chose to do.
ultimately, I mean, yes, you could say, oh, he want to people to colonize Mars. There's a mission statement. There's things that wanted to do it this way. But then, so what? So what
Yeah,
if human
it's
reach Mars? Right?
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
in terms of human endeavor, spirit, whatever. Okay, you can have a statement as the further mission, and then it makes sense to us, right? Oh yeah, that's an achievement. Human achievement is spreading humanity to the stars and this and that. Seems like a noble goal, but that's only as far as human is concerned, right? But in the grand scheme of things, well, what does it matter, right? What does it
yeah, yeah,
matter? It maybe as far as human survival, sure, right? If Earth get wiped out, at least we have another planet or multiple planets. That's
yeah.
the only rational reason to think about it. But so again, if you're a multi-billionaire, right? You're still a human being. You still have to eat and sleep and do all these things that humans do. Yes, you have more ways to, I don't know, not just enjoy yourself, but also have less stress, I guess, right? Of what money can bring you. And that's what most of the game people are playing is just try to satisfy that kind of basic survival plus a level of comfort. And that's
Hmm.
about it, right?
Yeah,
For human, as far as you as an organism is concerned, what more is it after that? It's all self-made goals. You just made something out of your heads. Okay, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll do that. All in the name of, I mean,
I think it's still like pick your own game essentially. It's like, you want to play that? You want to play rockets and spaceships? Yeah, you can do that. But then,
or
yeah,
anything you
nothing.
choose,
Yeah,
right?
it's just
You
whatever you
can,
choose.
yeah. So at a certain level, you start thinking about it, and it's like, oh yeah, well, money lose meaning then, right? It only it has meaning when you,
Yeah,
I
up
mean,
to an
when you actually
extent.
have a use. I mean, have a in. I mean, at a certain level, it loses meaning. Like, man, imagine if you have all the money in the world you can spend on, like, it loses meaning for you because you can get literally anything you want. But then what, right? Sure, you can buy experiences, you can buy security of your living situation and all that. But let's just say beyond that, right? Anything you spend is just like, okay, well, that's just because you got the money to do it and you can have an experience that you can kind of construct. It's like building a roller coaster. You don't need a roller coaster, but you're building it for the experience of the
Right,
physical
right, right.
sensations of doing it. And that's about it, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like that.
Yeah, so in that sense, every single thing is kind of a self-contained for the sake of it, just because, yeah, somebody wanted to experience it or invest in something and see how it turns up. Yeah, that's a good summary of that. But to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about, the kind of main takeaways from that first video that we did where our advice essentially was to cross-check information, question assumptions, avoid outsourcing judgment, which is a big one, and retain skepticism towards all kinds of exciting or elegant ideas, which is something that I've learned to do, and it's difficult because by default you don't want to do that because it's resource intensive, but that's generally an attitude you want to retain. And I think you emphasized that agency and thinking for oneself is the priority, and I emphasized evidence and practical relevance and resisting manipulation. And I think if you were to put it into a single line reflection for that episode, it was, we live between what resists us and what we imagine, and wisdom begins where neither certainty nor illusion can rule alone. Pretty poetic. Certainty nor illusion. Interesting. That kind of makes me think about the role of illusions in the human world, but maybe we'll keep that in mind once we start diving into these points of the whole topic that I wanted to go over today. So the tricky part, as you mentioned before, keeping all these ideas in mind at the same time. That's why, ruminating on them or contemplating them for a good amount of time is required to understand the whole structure. But I want to see if we can go quickly through the bulk of them. It's like a chain of logical thoughts and conclusions, so we can discuss the very end of it. But as always, let's see if it triggers any kind of thoughts, we can discuss all of that. So that is the summary of all the 3 videos that were done on the deconstruction rationality. And we covered some of it in the beginning, but I'll just revisit it quickly so we understand it for context. We did discuss that rationalism is limited, and I think that's fine. We'd agree to that. We discussed that rationalism assumes an objective world separate from self. Okay, that one we haven't actually discussed. So this one just summarizes, this is what I used AI to summarize us into a logical structure. So from 1 to 3 to, the end, how all these ideas connect. And this one is already like an assumption that goes against anything I understand. Objective world separate from self. Yeah, isn't that the reality?
Rationalism assumes an objective world separate from self. So that posits that the idea of self is the basis of rationalism, meaning that it's a...
No, it's saying that the world outside of you, essentially outside of what you consider yourself, which is a whole other big discussion. But for the purposes of this one, let's just define a self as anything you have a direct access to and is part of your agency. So to my understanding, that ends with the boundary of your body, because everything else, for example, I don't know, the most extreme example I can think of is just the relationships that you make with other people and the groups of people that you belong to. There are certain selfhoods in there, right? So for example, you yourself can be one person that participates in the sport, but if you're part of a team, their team is like another self, right? So a selfness is just a grouping or a class of unique things. I would say it like that. So yourself is just whatever you are calling Ben. There's no other things are implied there when I talk about yourself. I'm not talking about your mother, your nationality, or anything like that. It's contained to your specific self. So this point alone already doesn't make sense to me, because what he is arguing for essentially is that the world and self are not separate, which is a metaphysical claim at this point. That doesn't make sense to me. That would have to be demonstrated, because I would say my body is part of myself. I can control my body. I cannot control what happens in the world. if the world was not separate from me, I would be able to like snap my fingers and there would be no wars, you know? So this doesn't make sense to me.
Although, maybe I need the refresher on the definition of rationalism in this context.
Rationalism, yeah, I think we discussed it last time. Let me see if I have those notes handy.
It's just the faculty of human cognition that, like rationalism, here we talk about, is definitely, it's the describing the functions of this, how, I don't know the technical word, right? But it's like how the mind assumes the kind of logic of the world, essentially, right? According to the way, like, what's
So
rational. It's just that there
rationality
is.
is formal, systemic, explicit, technical, abstract, rigorous methods for thinking. It's rule-based sense making and acting. So it's essentially, you agree that there are certain rules that that define what makes sense. Kind of remember how we talked about irrational and irrational type of behavior. So irrational would be something that just doesn't make sense to you, you know. So if somebody, you know, goes naked
Yeah,
into a store, that is irrational because you like, why would you do that, right? It doesn't make sense. They may feel like doing it, whatever they can describe it like, but it's a relational type of the sense making thing is relational like that. So if a society considers something kind of in meaning it's close into normal, right? Rational, normal. So it's what is widely accepted. So rational thinking is something that is
but I guess my problem is reading into this is like, well, to me, what does that have to do with, because in this case, how I am understanding it, okay, rationalism is describing these process of how humans try to reason and understand the world, but it in itself is just, that's your human kind of systems and methods and and capabilities and of understanding that has nothing to do with the real world, in the way of the world is what it is, right? And you trying to understand it doesn't change it changed how you think about the world. So I don't know what's the connection between the idea of the self and the objective world. What does
I
that have
think
to do?
I think that's where the connection is. You named it, that it's inescapable that that all these ideas and how you relate to the world changes your worldview automatically, right? You could say two statements. One statement is that the world is not separate from you, right? And that's what this guy, I think, argues for. But a rational thought and a rational worldview, if you come up to a person on the street and ask them, do you think the world is separate from you? They would say yes. So he's just pointing out that uh, a rational worldview and a rational way to think about reality is that it is separate. The world is out there and yourself is separate from it. That's what it's all about.
Okay. So in that
Yeah.
way, I do agree that, yeah, you're not separate from it. You are affected by the real world, I'll just say, right? And no matter how you think about it, you are affected by it, right? It's just that the
No,
rationalism in this
you are
case.
affected by it, but let's put it to an extreme. Rationalism assumes an objective world separate from self. So it is separate from you. Do you think the world is separate from you, or is it, do you consider the world to be you? Essentially, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I don't think you can separate yourself out from that. I mean, experientially, yeah, maybe like when people would think that, oh, I'm a separate entity. I'm kind of, but then if you think about it, well, you are part of everything else.
Interesting.
There are
Okay.
different people who are just like you, making decisions the same way. Well, okay, maybe not exactly the same way, but very similar to how you would think about yourself in the world. I mean, oftentimes we want to kind of
I
separate
can,
ourselves from.
I can say that as well. So you can say that we are all part of one reality. It's a shared reality, world reality, right? But
What
to me, it
just
feels separate in terms of I participate in it, but I can go out, into the basement, close my eyes and meditate, and there will be nothing. The world will not be there in terms of I have no experience of it. I have no awareness of it. And it exists in the meantime, right? And that's the part that to me that means it's separate, because if I'm not aware of it, if I'm not um, have any effect on it, if I just sit in my basement, for weeks and nobody knows
right?
about me there,
So
the world still goes on and it has nothing to do with me,
yeah,
which
so
means it's separate for me.
experientially, it feels it is
But
separate.
from all metrics, like take any metric, if a guy sits in a cave and meditates for weeks and nobody knows about that, in what way is he one with the world?
Well, to me though, that just kind of divided into what happens in experience versus what happens in the macro sort of like, yes, you can have a situation like you're describing where a guy meditates and nobody knows about it and that's what happened, but it still happened. Let's just say that he did that. So it did happen. But you as an observer, you didn't know, right? So meaning that from the subjective kind of reality, yeah, that might as well didn't happen, right? For you.
Mhm.
But it did happen for that guy. He'd
In
experienced that
Yeah, in overall
meditation.
reality, that's something that happened, right?
Yeah. So there is still a thing still happened, right? It's
Yeah,
just whether
yeah.
you know it or not. So that's so I don't know what does what does this one kind of feed into that? So rationalism is the way to think.
Objective world separate from self. So what this points to, it's kind of connected to the next points, but essentially it points to the fact that essentially what it means to me is that the world and you are one living entity somehow. That's what this our guy argues for, I think.
Which is basically not non-dual.
I still don't, yeah, I still don't know. Yeah, something like that. But
So non-duality meaning you are not separate from everything. Everything is
it's,
one.
yeah, it's kind of like reality is alive and it's like one being, however you can interpret it, envision it, right? Even though obviously there are all these separate creatures and objects and stuff. So that's like the ultimate, highest view that you can take. But it doesn't make any sense on this level, on the level of rational thinking, which is the whole idea of this discourse in topics, because
Yeah, I
in
don't.
that first discussion we revisited that there are kind of modes of thinking, and the fact that there was pre-rational, irrational, reasonableness, rationality, rationalism, contemplative, then mystical, non-dual, and then at the highest level, which is like meta-rational, integrative. So that non-dual state, it's mystical. It refers to states of where you feel one with the world, that's not your regular everyday state of mind, right? That is some kind of enlightenment, which is not accessible to us right now on this level. I think it feels like it's like a lens that you can choose to see reality through it. But that's all it takes. It's like a choice. I can see it on that level that if you kind of repeat this stuff enough and if you just decide like, oh, for whatever reason, I feel like I'm going to see the world as everything is one, but then it has to be somehow validated through your internal experience. I know that you can have an internal experience like that, through meditation and enlightenment and substances, certain substances. But the fact that that's a temporary experience, and the fact that we right now living not in that experience, I think that kind of does play into what this guy argues for. That it's kind of your worldview affects how you perceive reality, but does it change reality? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Do any
Well,
of these
to
beliefs change anything about
to
how
s-
reality works?
well, that's
You
where
know?
you get into the I don't know, like it's impossible to prove and sort of almost science fiction territory where it is sort of like if you believe it to be so, and then in for the person who does believe it, then that might be true. But how does that
How
manifest,
would
right?
that
How does that
manifest?
be?
Yes.
How's
How
that
would that
be?
reflect in the world?
I can
I
keep
mean,
thinking about a thing. Like I
yeah,
wish
yeah, yeah.
something happened. Like that's why I can't take these manifestation people. Like they just, you know how there are some online, they're saying, oh, if you just think the thought or somehow
Yeah, yeah,
practice to wanting the thing that you want and you can manifest it for real. Like
yeah, yeah.
I don't know. For me, I'm not
Yeah,
of that
I don't get
vibe.
how it
So
works. Like it's
it's
you're supposed to like feel the outcome or something like that, but that doesn't make sense because like
to me that
how would that work?
there's no difference between you're just is kind of like psychic, right? If you believe in it, okay, but is that for real though? You know,
Yeah,
some
you would
people
have to
believe it, right?
demonstrate it, right? If that was real, I'd want to win a lottery. Like, why not? That would be nice.
Yeah,
What's wrong with that?
but it
That'd be
doesn't
cool.
happen, right? So, in the rational way to think about it is, well, that is impossible, or at least statistically very highly unlikely, right?
Yeah.
So,
So that's where I would stop with this. So this objective world separate from self means that you can't, because if it wasn't separate from self, it would be the manifestation style, because you'd be able to express your will by just willing it. You know, that would be the world is an extension of you. So if you thought of like, oh, I kind of feel like winning lottery today, and the world was like, ta-da, and you won, that would be a direct confirmation that, yeah, somehow the world and I are one.
yeah, but then we all know by experience that you can't wish good things to happen, and then it happens, right? I
It
mean,
doesn't, yeah, it doesn't
it,
really work.
if it happened once, okay, you can still rationalize it as, oh, there's coincidence, right? As it just happens that I
Yeah,
wish this and then it happened. But can you do it
exactly.
a second time, a third time, a fourth
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
right? Can you do it consistently? If you can consistently do it, then yes, then
yeah. Is
that
there
is
any kind
proof.
of science to it, right? Is
Yeah,
there's like, does the intensity of your wanting is involved, right? Something, but there isn't anything like that. There's just some vague ideas around this. So I would put this as like, I don't know. This doesn't really mean anything to me. Like I don't see the world as uh one with me. That's that's definitely just not how I see it. So I don't agree with that. Uh, I think by extension, I would also not agree with this. So rationalism treats subjectivity as less real than objectivity. Yeah, of course it's less real than objectivity because a brick is a brick. It doesn't matter if you think it's soft and squishy. If somebody throws it at you, the objective world wins, right? So your experience of it, like you can be having an altered state of consciousness, you know, through substances, and you may see that the brick is a ball that you want to kick, but if you kick it, the objective world will hurt you. So this doesn't make sense either. I would say this is BS. Rationalism overtrusts formal proof, explicit method, and mechanical reasoning. I mean, it's not that it overtrusts. That's literally the only method, as we
but is
discussed, of how we can measure what's real and what's not.
what reality
Yeah,
constitutes.
and again, kind of like in this case, rationalism, rationality, we can think of it as just normal, everyday
It's common
thinking and what
sense,
we've
right? It's
been doing. Because
almost in a way like common sense where, okay, 1 + 1 = 2, right? The
yeah,
idea
it's
that, okay,
essentially
this is,
what we've been doing, how we've been living our life and approaching reality and studying it throughout our whole life, right? That's what is the basis of this whole civilization. We're not talking about spirituality here or any kind of other non-physical mysterious phenomena. We're not talking about that yet. We're talking about, kind of talking about it, I guess, but it's I'm still trying to kind of wrap my mind around some of these parts because I can feel what he's trying to point to, but it doesn't really make sense overall. So this point again that rationalism overtrusts proof and explicit method, as opposed to what? What do you mean overtrusts formal proof? Yeah, that's the part where it doesn't make sense either. there is no overtrusts. You are
Describing the
you are
things as they
investigating
happen,
reality,
right?
and whatever you're finding is whatever you're finding. There's no overtrust. So, like, again, to take an example of the theory of microbes, for example, the microbes have always been there, as far as we're concerned. So there's no, like, how would you overtrust it? We see that, yeah, if we insulate the well, the microbes will not be getting in there. That's just proof. That's proof in a sense that the reality proves it, right? It's either like that or it's not like that. So again, I feel like my whole beef with this guy essentially is that there's some kind of bullshitting going on. Like, the question that I want to answer with our discussion about is why is there a grown-ass man out there with millions of followers trying to convince people with dozens of hours of videos that reality is a dream? That's the question I want to answer, okay? That's the real question. Like, why is this happening? That's what I'm curious about.
Well, you're not
Because,
gonna know unless you're the guy who's doing it,
yeah,
because he
well,
knows for sure why he's doing it.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. I
But
think,
it feels like he's trying to make this model fit, and then it's kind of like
yes.
trying to add explanations to.
And the question's why? What's in it for whom, right? That still goes back to that. So I would say, yeah, this doesn't make much sense either. Like, I don't think this is correct. And then the conclusion, therefore, rationalism cannot reach ultimate truth on its own. Well, what is ultimate truth?
Well, because look, even with anything that's end with ism,
Mm,
the limit of that is that it is a human theory, right?
yeah,
Any isms, doesn't matter what, any way, any isms we form, as in theories of ideas to describe certain things in the world, it's just that's just your opinion, man. Like, it's you think this is how it works for all these different systems, but the problem is that it's still limited to your own cognitions and understanding. So meaning that you maybe you can say that, okay, the real world is separate from you because you cannot, like, the signifier cannot be designified, right? You can have a tag saying this is called this. It's like, okay, a bread. A bread is bread. You're describing bread, you're attaching a name for it, but that's just your human way of.
right. It's our label for it. It's our kind of invention. So, yeah, again, if aliens came over and they have no idea about anything about, like, bread, we would have to teach them, like, yeah, we invented this stuff. This is what it's made of. This is the function it serves for us. And, like, they can't even eat bread because that, like, they don't even, have stomachs or whatever. So to them, it would be a completely alien thing that they never thought of that could exist. From that standpoint, yeah, any kind of ism or approach, as I just added this from my own essentially, is that, yeah, it's going to be a limited filtered view of reality.
So
So
imagine
what would be an ultimate
how
truth in
wouldn't,
compared to
yeah,
that?
yeah. So how would an alien understand the rationale of creating bread? They're like,
Yeah. The whole thing doesn't make sense to them, right?
why would you create bread? You don't need to do this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, even then you can say bread. Well, why does bread have to exist? Look, it's just flour and water. You can eat flour by itself. You can drink the water by itself. You don't have to put it together and cook it into this thing, right? It's a method of consuming calories. Okay, but that's just your style, right? Like, you do it this way
Yeah.
versus another way. You can do it another way. So
And this
what's
stuff
rational about it, right?
this stuff is greatly being explored in sci-fi, novels and movies and stuff. That's what I really liked how that was done in the Stranger in the Strangeland book that I read this year, which was, depicting a Martian society, like a culture, and they were completely different from humans, right? And just just think of how difficult it is to make up something like that as a writer. that
Yeah.
is so so different from human nature that but that he did it in that book, and it was, to me, it was amazing, because it does make you think like, wow, really, a different kind of beings with different biology and sociology and spirituality and everything could exist, and it would be completely different. So he was able to depict it that way, where this human guy who was born on Mars and was raised by Martians was in a unique position where he was culturally and Martian by all mental standards, but he eventually came back to Earth, and society, people like kind of re-educated him on how to human, and it the shows the journey of how he tries to understand the human world from a standpoint of a Martian mind, and it's crazy, it's mind-boggling, because yeah, everything, none of it makes sense to him, because the humans are just backwards. Because
Yeah.
in that world, in that book, the Martians were essentially spiritually evolved to the point where they were kind of behaving like one being that shares multiple bodies, something like that. Uh, and yeah, it was fascinating, because it shows you that even though you live in the same reality with the same matter, uh, well, that book did show that, yeah, you could know something about reality that, like essentially like the technology, right? If we invented a technology right now to uh, say that allowed for telepathy to exist, could exist, could happen, could, who says it can't? That would be a whole new paradigm for humanity to live in. It would change everything, how we interact, how we behave, etc. So it's like that. But if you don't, yeah, if you meet a society that has the technology, the society that doesn't have the technology would be alien, right? You wouldn't even understand what's involved, because you don't know. You don't have any frame of reference. So to me, it goes back to the lens thing. It's almost like everything is just its own limited configuration, you know? So if you're looking at the world through the eyes of a human, yeah, it will be one thing. If you're looking at through the eyes of a bug, it will be a different thing.
I just think that, in this case, that rationalism, the idea that we can ascertain from the world a series of principles that is kind of essentially describing the physical world and how the physical world interact with things within it. And that's how we deduce this rational idea, right? Okay, if this happens, then this happens, and then that happens, right? It's it's kind of deduced by experience, because you start seeing and experiencing these things
Yeah,
happening this way
yeah, yeah,
repeatedly. It's like, okay, so that makes sense. If this thing happened, and then this will happen, right?
yeah.
So
I will. I'm willing to concede that, like, this point, this still makes sense to me, because essentially of this is that our perception is limited, right? Our experience of the world is limited. We can only see that many colors, that many sounds, and we know there's much more of that out there. So, yeah, the reality contains much more than we can see and understand. That's fine.
yeah,
Whether you call it like with rational thinking, you cannot understand all of that. Okay, but where this leads to, and I think let's just proceed there, is essentially there's some kind of other way
yeah,
to ascertain, or to understand or witness this ultimate truth, right? Because to me, the central part of it is that ultimate truth, which is what is the ultimate, and who decides the ultimateness of it, and how would you know if it's ultimate or
I
not?
just think that, okay, the reason why he's using well, as far as how I'm reading this, is like the focus on rationalism is that because we like to believe that things happen for a reason. For the human mind, we try to understand things like, okay, if it happens that way, there gotta be a way to explain why it happens, right? Just like anything we found out scientifically about, say, how the stars are formed, how planets are formed, like there's not just the theories.
Because they're causes.
Yeah, so you actually can find out about the
Something
composition of the
preceded
star
the
and all
event.
this data correlate
Yeah.
into the theory that, okay, this proves that this is what happens when these gases and dust and come together, and that's what happens. So extending from that is that we try to understand everything with this lens. The idea that we can
Yes.
explain everything, it's just that you don't know the causes if you can't explain it yet.
Okay.
So that's why the emphasis on rationalism, meaning that that's how the basic model of human understanding so far. It's just that
Okay.
we're
I
trying
see
to
what you mean.
understand things
Yeah. So
because it
this is
gotta
pointing
be.
out that to that instrument, that approach being insufficient for finding the answers that we're looking for. Right?
Yeah, because
Okay.
to the human mind, it will be like, okay, if it doesn't make any sense, I mean, look, either it makes sense or either it has a reason why it happens, or you're just magic, or it's just like you're just making it up. Because how would it be explained that this happens for real, right? Because we assume that there's a reason for
And
all the
this
things that
is,
happens.
yeah, this is where that leap will happen somewhere here in this logical chain of explanations. But let me just ask you this right now. If at some point it leads you to a conclusion where, like, what is magic to you? What does magic mean?
And again, that by trying to explain magic is almost like, well, magic as in the traditional sort of like sci-fi fantasy magic, right? Like not like magic tricks. But yeah, like a magic, you've played like any games that has fantasy elements, all magic. Well, it has its own kind of systems and things. So you can explain away in the world. Okay, what is mana? You can explain it away as, oh, this is a thing that exists, and then this can be used to do spells
Yeah,
and blah blah blah.
it's kind of its own
But
mechanism, but
it's still
essentially,
rational. It's still there's a reason why this will work, right? Because you're not just saying, oh, it just because it's incomprehensible. But
but
even if you say,
it's some kind of immaterial method for manipulating reality. It's
yeah,
some kind of
which is
invisible, untraceable, right? It's traceable to some kind of action, some kind of ritual or incantation, but as to why it would work, it's unknown, right? The magic part is that you don't know why it
you don't know
works.
how.
Yeah, you don't
but
know
it
how it works.
works.
So like, but in sci-fi and fantasy, it would be just like it's just there. Well, yeah, if you are like a magician, if you like whatever you do, right?
Yeah, manipulate
Cast a spell
yeah.
and concentrate enough and visualize this thing, for some reason it works. That's just a method, right? But nothing like that exists in the world where, because there, like it's like in Witcher, for example, right? The point is it's still repeatable. Like if you cast a spell, like if you learn it, if you do
cast
it
a
the same
spell.
spell every
Yeah.
time, you get the fireball every time.
So
That's
it's not
that's
really magic. It's in the idea that, because when you say
it's just
magic,
another mechanism.
you
Yeah.
have to assume the normal with the idea of something outside of that normal reality. That's magic. So it's automatically assumed. When you say something is magical, it's not out of the norm. So you automatically assume what normal is, and this is not normal. This is not doesn't happen. But that's just a way to kind of explain that this is extraordinary. But really, it's not magic. It's just it's it's just the thing that's not that you don't experience in common kind of human life. But in the world of these fantasy world, that is not magic. It's just the way a system works, right? It's just a
Yeah,
normal
it's just
everyday
another
occasion.
mechanism,
You have
an
mages. That's the
ability.
whole thing. That's their
Yeah,
world. It's just mages exist. They
that's
manipulate
just
this
something that
arcane thing,
exists.
and that can be. I mean, of course, they don't want to explain it because in the fictional term, you don't want to explain it because if you explain it, then it loses the magic, right? It loses the mysterious nature to it, and
Yeah,
it
how
loses
does
the,
it work? Which is
So
essentially, if magic was real, there would have to be science to it.
yeah.
That's the
But
funny
but
part.
also, I see all these magic tricks, and there are videos showing how it's done. And
Right.
once you understand, oh, okay, they just
Yeah,
meant it's like
there's a way to do it.
there's a way to do it.
It looks like something else is happening, but that's like an illusion, right? It's an illusionism
It's an illusion.
where they make it seem so. So okay, but like let's go forward and see what else we're discussing here, because so far I can agree to this. Rationalism is limited. That's fine. Rationalism is limited in the sense that humans are limited, our ability is limited, our perception is limited. That's where we can stop with this. So that is okay. all knowing happens through mind. This is what is interesting. That's what I liked. Every fact is filtered through consciousness. Yes. So whatever knowledge or a learning or fact or perception you are considering, it's always done through human consciousness. Whenever we're talking about knowledge or any kind of concept, really, that we've only seen other humans do that. So it's done through consciousness. That's fine. Interpretation is unavoidable. I'd agree to that as well, because like when you learn something, say if you go to school and learn science, it's a certain framework that you learn and you will interpret it your way, but eventually you will learn it. You will essentially fix your mind with this system that you learned, and you'd be able to do stuff within the system that, according to physics, you can do this, this, and this with this conditions. But your interpretation doesn't do much there, when you learn the system of physics. What is the role of your interpretation for it? The physics works whether you interpret it in some different way or not, right?
Yeah, the physics doesn't change just because you interpret it in certain ways. So that there are definitely certain things that in the real world physically that is, I mean, you can say they're immune to interpretation because it's just what happens, right? A
Yeah,
certain
interpretation is unavoidable. Again, it goes back to the whole idea of fire burning for me. The fact that fire burns is not up for interpretation.
Yeah, not everything. I mean, the interpretation part only applies to how you're understanding the facts, right?
Yes.
So the idea that you can observe a fire burning, well, yes, that's the phenomenon. And there's not a lot of room for you to interpret. I mean, you can interpret
Right.
differently. You can say, oh, the fire is spirits. The fire is the gods. Yes, you can. But
Yeah.
the physical reality of fire, you can't. You're gonna put your hand in it, you're gonna get burned. So that's
fire is a phenomenon, and it's a fact that it burns, and it's a fact that if you put your hand in there, you'll
but your
burn your
interpretation
hand.
of what that is, it can be different.
Of like
Imagine
your
if you're
interpretation seems like about the causes, maybe like why it happened, right? The God's will to do so. So interpretation is a story, but I don't know.
But if you can understand,
what else would interpretation mean?
So again,
here?
knowing how it works, that's knowledge, right? I mean, even if you say, let's just say, if ancient people interpret fire and they have a whole lores about how fire comes about, that's also knowledge. To them, as far as they know, that's also knowledge, right?
Okay.
But it's all knowledge, but for us, we want to figure out, okay, so as far as we figured out what fire actually actually is. It's combustion.
Yeah. It's
you can
interaction
describe
of
what it is.
certain particles, etc. Right?
Yeah. So what this is much more precise. So from all the way back in ancient people describing fire as spirits, all the way to that now, where we can understand is particles, is all this, right? So now we're very precise with the definition, meaning that there will not be that much interpretation in terms of the physical properties of fire.
Is it accurate to say that that's also just an interpretation of what fire is? Like with all the way our current science understands what fire is.
I think the distinction is more of a, would you call that technicality? It's more of a, it's true that the signifier is not the signified, yes, but we're pretty accurate in describing what physically it does, right?
Yeah, what fire is.
All the properties of a certain things, we can describe it down to a very minute and precise manner. But yes, it's still an interpretation because the actual thing is apart from your understanding of it. Like you're just trying to understand and attach a label to things that exist in the real world. So it's almost just by definition you are interpreting it, but that interpretation is pretty much real as far as you're concerned because it describes very precisely the property of the thing that you're describing.
Okay, but let's pull it back to complete experience. Say you're just born, you don't know nothing, and then you experience fire. So you have no conceptions without
you're going to interpret what that is.
Yeah,
right?
you just see it, right? You see what it is, You feel the heat. You're like, oh, okay. So you understand that it's bright and it's hot. What's your interpretation doing? Like, where's the interpretation part?
To understand why does it happen, right? So what is it, right? It's like you see fire for the first time. It's like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Why is it warm? Why
Yeah.
is it hot? Why is it, burns your hand, right? You try to figure out what it is. That's the fundamental thing that humans need to figure out. So, okay, is it danger? Is it safe? What is the thing? So you can know how to deal with it, right? So
But
that's
even
the,
like, what if you just, so you just, let's say we just named it, we call it fire, and it's bright and it burns. All of these are facts. We just perceived fire through our consciousness. But is that an interpretation, or is that
yeah, it's,
how we directly perceived reality?
I mean, you're interpreting what is happening right now with the
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah.
And you have theories about, maybe you have a theory. If you have a theory, then yeah, you try to explain, okay, well, what is this thing? Right? Any myth that happens in the past, it's just people trying to figure out, okay, what's all this phenomenon?
Yeah,
Right?
but that's what I'm trying to get. Like, is interpretation just a wider understanding, like telling a story and context? What if, because the fact, that's where I stop it. I call it fire, it's hot, and it's bright. And to me, that's a fact, because that's how I perceive it. That's how I experienced it. So to me, that's not much of interpretation, because that's where I stop it. Like, I don't care how it's made, what happens to it. I just care about what it means to my reality, to my life, right? I know that I now can use it. Maybe I can cook stuff on it and I can get warm with it, but I don't interpret anything about it, right? I just accept it as is, as I experienced it. Bright, hot, I call it, so I can I can
I
reference it.
think here part of this, we have to distinguish the semantics of it, because the idea of using the word interpretation, to me, how I understand it is, well, everything to humans is an interpretation. Because I know we're talking semantic here, but it's the idea of just fundamentally it's how you interpret it to mean to you. You can accept it as this thing that's bright and warm and hot, and you figure out that you can use it. Okay. Even if you don't question how it came about, you still store that information of what you interpret this thing to be, right? To be useful. At least it's useful. Even if you don't define what it is, you can say, I can cook food. If you understand you can cook food with it, that's the knowledge that you came away with, right? Even if you ignore the physical reality of what that actually thing is or how does it work, at least you still extract some kind of information about the phenomenon for you to be used. So that's your
So
to me,
I
that
was
means
just
interpretation. You're interpreting, okay, what it means to you.
yeah, I was just drilling down on kind of the differences there, which is,
Because I think the problem
it
is
has
that
to do with
sometimes words
semantics.
trip us, right? The words, it
Yeah.
trips us how
What
to understand,
exactly the word mean,
yeah, what
right?
it's
Because some
referring
of
to,
these
right? When you
concepts are
say
very
fact,
dense.
what does
Yeah.
that
What
mean by
do you mean by
fact? Fact
fact? What do
as
you mean
in,
by what do you mean by everything? But just to be aware of this distinction. So semantics focuses on meaning, while interpretation is the act of recovering that meaning from language, syntax, and context. So that means like meaning exists, and your interpretation is kind of like your way of ingesting it and deciphering it, right? Uh, then yes, I think it's okay. We can say that a semantic interpretation maps expressions to their intended meanings, often by combining the meanings of smaller parts into a larger whole. Okay, yes, which is like one of the most fascinating things to me, right? How do we construct this meaning, and the fact that it seems like we can we can get meaning out of, there's like meaning math essentially, right? You can do meaning plus meaning, another meaning. Okay, in that case, I think I can agree to that interpretation is always happening essentially, right? We are always interpreting, just like a conversation, right? You're always, like, if you space out right now, you will not be interpreting. You will be like you will not reconstruct that meaning that I'm trying to convey to you, right? And we will not be able to have a conversation. So that interpretation is unavoidable for interfacing with reality, right? Guess that's true.
Yeah,
Because
because
interpretation is always you just trying to understand what anything means, right?
what it means, what it is, what it's yeah, because everything is filtered through your understanding, right? Like you need to know what things are to understand it to kind of be able to operate within the world, essentially. Because if you because it's like yeah, if you go into an alien world, like you'll be afraid to kind of explore that world because it's like you don't understand how everything works,
You
right?
don't know
What
anything,
is
yeah.
everything? What is, so you don't know what it's gonna do. So that's the danger part. So human knowledge is it just accumulates so that you know what's dangerous and what's not at the fundamental level, right? Like you can expand upon that knowledge about so I can learn more about the world, yes, but the basic kind of I don't know if you call it impulse or but basically the fundamental information that you need to know is it dangerous? Can I use it?
Yeah, and
That's the practical
what are its qualities, right?
yeah,
Because
that's the
if you
practical part. And then on top of that, you because you have more cognitive functions, you try to drill down like, okay, that's interesting, but why is it that way? Why is it that's how we
yeah, yeah,
construct all this thing we found out about
you
plants,
can trace
animals,
it
all the
to the
physical
rest of the
reality.
context.
Yeah, so
Okay, then I can accept that. There's also the bias, context, intuition, and judgment are always involved. Our bias is that our preconceived notions and what we assume, what we encountered, what we internalized. Yeah, it's always there. Context, yes, that's how it's definitely part of meaning interpretation. Context defines, or, your understanding of what's happening. Intuition being what? I always have problem with this concept.
it's just
Intuition is like a heuristic, right?
it's yeah, you can say it's nature natural like I don't know how you would even, because it's more of it's a feeling thing. It's a sort of like a subsystem, a subconscious kind of thing that's kind of built in. I guess you can describe like, is it evolutionary? You can say it's always passed down somehow. It's something about
So intuition is the ability to understand or know something immediately without deliberate reasoning, often described as a gut feeling or hunch.
yeah. So
And in
that is
psychology, it's usually explained as the mind quickly drawing on past experience and pattern recognition outside of conscious awareness. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's kind of like this. Yeah, it's like a knowing essentially, right? It's when you just know that for a fact, whether it's correct or not correct, but it's the feeling of knowing something. So that's why it exists as a phenomenon, right? Some people can say, "Oh, it's my intuition. My intuition says we need to turn right here," right? You don't know why you know it, but you like have this strong feeling of like I just know it's, which is such a funny thing, like to me, because
Yeah.
I don't
But
know.
But but see, that's the part where maybe, yeah, in this case, I can agree with that whole, again, going back to the rationalism part, is that we try to put ourselves as this kind of quote unquote rational being and going through all of our understanding by applying logic and sort of common sense and this and that. But there's another aspect of us that is we don't understand it as much as we do, which is intuition, emotion, these things that
Yeah,
are
there's a lot
part
of
of
stuff
us,
under the hood.
yeah, that we don't know how to quantify, right? This is the whole why is there a whole field of psychology? Why do we need to understand that? Because that's something where it's not a hard science in the way of like you can measure it exactly, you know, but there is something going on there, right?
Yeah,
That we can't quantify otherwise, but it's still enough that and important enough for us to understand why do you interpret things this way, feel this way, or how
yeah,
to adapt your passive like your past experiences, how to in, I mean, how do you process trauma, how do you process all this stuff, right? So
yeah.
it's a
Seems to be a
mess
whole
because
internal world down there.
humans are not I wouldn't say that we're rational beings. It's more in that way that this makes sense for us to adopt this view and to kind of, because we understand that there gotta be a reason why this thing happens this way and that way. We can observe things happening, has its own kind of
The
rhythms and
everything has its own causes, you would say that. But
yeah,
the rational irrational part, I think it is connected to the conscious knowing and understanding, right? For example, that's part of that's why psychoanalysis exists, is that it's trying to unearth some of these connections and reasons, because like I'm reading Carl Jung's books right now, and they're crazy. Like I'm trying to wrap my head around it, but he's delved so deep into that world because he worked with real humans, where he's essentially able to see connections of certain experiences and behavior, and a lot of it has to do with how your parents raised you and how they treated you and what happened there. But there's some kind of subconscious interaction and learning and chemistry is happening underneath the hood of which you're not aware of. And that stuff can literally drive your behavior. Like some people can be addicts because of that, which like it's compulsive. They can't help it. But for some reason, or OCD or something, right? Stuff like that can be very much driven by some kind of thing happening underneath the hood, which is just, it interacted because your mother was like that. She caused you to learn this underneath, and that's now it happening. And a psychoanalyst could help you uncover it. And from what I understand, when it happens, when people like, oh, this is the mechanism, and there's some kind of processing happens, it can really unwind these causes and change the behavior in people's lives, which is crazy if you think about it. Like, what is that? Is that some kind of other psychic life happening, like within you, of some other parts and mechanism that you're not aware of? Like, what's going on?
yeah, which is kind of the sort of contested territory for humans, where a lot of us will be on the camp of, oh, everything is science, you can explain everything, there gotta be a rational reason for why things happen the way it is, we can explain everything. And there are other part of the camp of humans who think that, oh, well, there are extrasensory stuff happening, there are things you can't explain away, there are sort of, you know that kind of, on like, they're saying essentially science can't explain everything. Like, there are things happening in the world that somehow we just don't know why it happens, right? There are certain people believe in ghosts. They think they're that for real. There got to be. I mean, some of them try to apply the scientific way to explain why that is, and there are other who just say, "Oh, you can't explain that way. It just we know it exists. This and that, right?" So
So
it's
I would almost say that there's some kind of definitely separation between the physical solid world of objects and mental world. Like you can experience mental phenomena that only you can experience in your mind because there's some kind of something going on, but
yeah,
it will not really be connected to the material world until it causes you to interact with it in some way. So it seems like there is a material world, and then there is the mental world.
yeah. But
That's at
then
least we can kind of see and understand and
But then
experience.
you have guys who do intravenous DMT and then
Well, then,
experience.
yeah, that's
How do you explain that? I mean,
yeah,
don't
that's
know how.
that's
It's
that's a third dimension into it,
yeah. So
because
that's the question. Then these people experience something like that, and they can actually referring back to these common things that happens, almost like these are facts. Like the entity that they see all like the same or it's similar. I mean, they do
yeah,
it different
they're
sessions, different
saying
people,
that
but they
it's
see the
more
same
real
thing.
than the regular reality.
Right, and then what does that mean? It's more
What does
real
that
than the
mean?
reality. Like,
Yeah.
but you the one experiencing it, but other people who haven't experienced, they wouldn't know.
Yes.
So what does that mean, right? So this is why I understand why, like, he would formulate all this, because somehow, the
It's an
human
attempt
drive
of
to understand
reconciling all
everything,
of it,
right?
right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Again, it's this impulse to find the overarching theories of everything and trying to kind of make it make sense, right?
Yes.
So I get why he's doing it in this way, but I don't know, right? That's
Well,
just an
let's keep going,
interpretation.
right? It's an interpretation. It's like another frame. So I would agree to this that all these things are happening. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of connected to the fact that we are limited, limited beings dealing with limited perceptions and limited ability to think. And this is where the conclusion leads, and this is the part that I find interesting. So there is no view from nowhere outside mind. It does seem profound when you think about it. It essentially points you to the fact that everything is happening in your mind. Whatever you learn about as an understanding is happening in the mind. Biases, context understanding is happening in the mind. Intuition is something is happening in the mind. You're judging from the mind. That's interesting. All knowing happens through the mind. Yeah, anything you know, any way you know, it's happening in your mind. The reality may be whatever. It may be this way or that way, but your experience of it only happens in the mind. So that's something important to keep in mind. But it's these are essentially building blocks. We're proceeding through this kind of logical chain of facts, even though like some of these kind of don't make complete sense to me, but overall they make sense so far. That rationalism is limited. All knowing happens through the mind. I agree to that. The next one, proper thinking cannot be fully formalized. So this is where it gets tricky again. What do we mean by proper thinking? See, this is where I feel like somebody is trying to sneak by something. What is meant by proper thinking?
So rules always need exceptions.
Blind rules requires tacit skill. Logic can't guarantee truth. Well, the fact that rules always need interpretation is true. It's true in a sense that like meaning is relational again, right? You can be at work and you can tell the rule to a group of people, and oh yeah, for sure there will be different interpretations of that rule, because I've seen that in real life. People like,
Yeah.
oh, that means that to me, and it's the same words, same semantics, same language, right? But it literally means different things to different people, and that could be different reasons for that, but it's a fact. People construct meaning differently.
And even in the world of the legal realm,
Yeah, that's why it
actual legal,
exists.
that's why there's, how there are
Let's be
different ways to
precise.
do it as well, because there are two ways that people kind of formulate it, right? One is the sort of precedence way, like something happened and there's a judgment and we're gonna have to follow that judgment
That's what it
as
meant,
an
yeah.
example. And then there are the actual rule base, where is coming from the Napoleonic Code. So Napoleon invented this way of ruling, where there is a mandate, there is a edict that says this is the rule, and that applies at all times. And that's one other way to interpret rules. And and then this one for I forgot the technical name, but the one that used in the UK and the US, the idea is that you just figure it out when the actual situation arises,
Hmm.
and then you figure out this is what's the judgment, and we gotta
Yeah.
follow that as a point of reference for
Yes.
any future exceptions that has to be
Yeah.
made. So, but then yes, there is always going to be exceptions, because there's going to be situations where the specific situation is not what the word of the rule actually encompass. This is
Yeah,
where,
because every situation can be unique, can have more factors uncovered and, whether true or not. But so I would agree with that then, that the fact that rules need interpretation and that can be different, and rules can have exceptions because, I mean, rule is something that's like a guideline, essentially, the human decided guideline. Rule is like, let's not, let's wear protective boots on construction sites as a rule, you know? But there could be the situation as, something like this person has crazy feet that he can't wear these boots or something unique, right? Essentially unique situation with unique factors that do not, cannot follow the rule. That easily can happen. I think that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Which
The
is
rule
why
is like
we
a guideline for some specific purpose.
which is why this whole legal system exists, is because you have judges who can have to make judgments. You have all these, part of the system to kind of figure out, okay, is this fair? Is if we make this judgment for this specific incident or whatever it is, does that make sense? Right? Because you still have the human to interpret the law and sort of like applying it, because you can't just like, oh well, this is the rule, so that's it. You're gonna have a
Yeah,
lot of misjudgments because what there are circumstances. If you can't just automate this stuff, you gotta go through every single thing that happens with this
yeah.
situation, and then you figure out, is
Again,
this
especially because it involves different humans who have different agendas, different interpretations, um, different circumstances. To understand, essentially, you have to kind of invent what is just. For a lot of new situations, you have to, because like what determines what's just and what's not. You hear these days, especially, you hear a lot of it. Oh, this is unfair. This is unjust. Yeah, based on what? Based on just you wishing to be otherwise, right? But that's
yeah.
all it is. It's just some wish. I want it to be that way, so I deserve that. Who says who? What does determine that? Just because you want something that way doesn't mean that it's fair that you get it, right? That's where the 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 part about deciding what justice is even is, because it can also be seen from many different perspectives, many different uh, persons and identities. So such a tricky thing, almost also like seems arbitrary, in some way.
But basically, it's a thing where we have to draw the line somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, the
yeah,
world is too complex, but we got to make some rules, because otherwise people
yes,
keep getting into trouble, getting into, I don't know. If, this is why there is, for example, there are safety regulations. Why? Because people die by not observing, these
yeah,
rules. So that's why they exist in the first place. So it's not some of these, it depends on what kind of situation and what kind of rule. Some are more interpretive than others. Others are just there exist because there's a reason why. Because there are dire consequences if you don't observe, such a rule. So
uh, yeah. But like regarding these rules and exceptions, that makes complete sense, right? So
I get what he's saying. So when he say formalize, meaning that is you can't cookie cutter put a mold on this and then every single time it works. It doesn't. So there got to be interpretation involved. So I guess what he's saying is any sort of mental model that you're trying to formulate about the world, there's going to be caveat to it. There's going to be some kind of exceptions
yes,
of the rule. So you kind of have to make judgment calls almost, right? Meaning that in that way, he does, I interpret that he does agree the fact that even with his kind of model of everything, there are exceptions, right? The idea that it's so fluid, meaning that you can't,
yes,
it's still like you can't just be like, okay, this is what it is. That's it. There's no other interpretation. This is the very thing that I'm describing. No, even then, he can't have this kind of thing being captured entirely. It seems like it's still kind of fluid.
yes,
And
yes. I agree with that. So I think um, I understand. I understand and I agree with that. Even this part, just to confirm what tacit skill means, is essentially something like it's a skill that is learned through doing. That's something that you internalize, and it's something you can't even describe. Right? It's kind of like a master doesn't know how he does it. It's that. So it's certain things like you won't be able to explain how you adhere to certain rules or how you do it, right? So a lot of it is internalized, which again, what does that mean exactly? But it's some kind of learning. It's some kind of adoption of a behavior or ability or act. Um, so I can agree to that. It's kind of like once you learn playing. Uh, or even like once you learn a language, as we often encounter in our discussions, that uh, you're just not aware of how you use the language sometimes,
And also
because
how you break the language. You have all these
it changes. Yeah, it's fluid.
contractions and whatever that's against the rule, right? The rule says you're supposed to say it this way, but we always, make shortcuts, take shortcuts and change it. And language is fluid. Language changes, right? Different words come into being, different vocabularies and stuff. So it's constantly flowing. So to have any sort of like, this is the concrete exact thing, you don't have an exact thing.
Yeah.
You can't be exact.
Then, yeah, I can see that. So then kind of logic or, an ability, it's like you can't capture reality. I would extend it to that, right?
Yeah.
Logic alone cannot guarantee truth. It's that. It's kind of like the moment you're try to get a grip or be aware of this moment right now, it's gone, right? Where is this moment? We've been kind of through that.
There's no precise
epiphany before.
sort of. It's the same as, okay, we understand enough about, for example, we understand enough about the orbital mechanics to launch a rocket. But every launch is different, right? It's like,
yes,
there's no exact space point in space where you can be exactly the same at
right.
for
There
two
will be different
launches.
forces at play.
It will
in
be
conditions.
but we understand enough about it that we can predictably do it kind of repeatedly, right? So every instance is different, but not too much.
And adjust to every situation.
So we can adjust to it, right? So it happens basically, is almost guaranteed to happen, right? But there are still factors that kind of affects the success and failures as well. So there's always unpredictable things that happens in the real world. Just like if you study anything on Earth, even the way the water flows, the ocean flows, the air flows, all these things, they're very chaotic. There's no, you can interpret patterns, you can apply a general sort of understanding of it, and you can predict the weather more or less, but you can't be that precise. You can't just be like, exactly this moment in time it will rain. Not that precise. You can kind of, get close to it. So that's sort of where humans are just trying to reduce and be more precise as we can, but you ultimately can't really be that precise, right?
Yeah. So then, I would agree to that. The proper thinking cannot be fully formalized, and by proper thinking here, we mean
like a complete theory, or a complete kind of thought
or
process,
real, or essentially real, like the actual thinking that you are doing, because it's so dynamic, it's so massive, it's so relational and fluid that any ability, any attempts to capture it, to formalize it, to say it, like, to put it in some kind of equation, this is how you do it. Yeah, it's not doable, because in a sense, it's like it's kind of like you would have to, in order to simulate this whole reality, you would need to put it into code in such a precise way where everything is denoted, which is not possible. So it's like nothing can do it, It's like to simulate that, the reality, you would need another reality with the computational power to accommodate for everything.
We haven't found a way to replicate that. So
it's that. Yes, this makes sense as well. This is okay. First-person experience is irreducible. Qualities like color, taste, and felt experience cannot be reduced to equations without loss. Yes, that's the whole idea of qualia, and the fact that nothing exists to denote it, really, to fully. It's not equal. No language, no interpretation, no depiction of it is like the same thing. It's a unique thing, right? So qualia. Consciousness is directly known in experience. Well, to me, like, consciousness becomes kind of synonymous with experience, essentially. Consciousness to me is experience.
Yeah, but to me, like, I still can't explain what is consciousness. I still don't have any. It's like you kind of get it what it is, but then you can't really define what it is.
To me, it's the medium by which experience happens.
Sure, but then it's like, okay, but why? That's the question, right? It's like we
Why
don't
what?
understand why it happens. Why are we, what is the nature of consciousness, right? The whole
Why
holy grail
is there
of,
consciousness? Why is there awareness at all?
yeah, or how does it work, right? It's all the question that we have for cognitive science, right? Where we even the word consciousness, like it's like, okay, we came up with this word to describe all this fuzzy thing
Yeah,
that we
that's where
kind of get it, but
yeah, it becomes paradoxical, right? It's like in this instance, consciousness, which is what we either have or are, but this ability to just
yeah,
to perceive it into question, right? It's all included in there. In this case, consciousness is questioning itself. It's like it's asking, what am I?
and
What
then you
is
have,
me?
and then you come to the question of, okay, is it outside the mind, or so is it a
What is the
part of the
mind?
fabric of reality? Like, just say, like,
Fabric, yes.
all encompassing in the universe, like some kind of particle out there,
Yeah, well,
or
that's
is it
where it's all
just in
part
the
of this
mind,
big discussion.
right? Or is
Yes.
it just in the mind? Because the thing we can understand, okay, if you go to sleep, you lose consciousness. Okay, so you're not conscious anymore.
You're
Does
not
that mean
conscious, right?
it's not
Because
conscious
you can
in
have
terms of,
dreamless sleep.
so again, it depends on how you interpret
Where
what it
is it at
is.
that point?
Yeah. If it's from the
Yes.
mind, then somehow it's shut down when you are not conscious. I mean, not completely, but like, you don't have the,
Well, yeah, that's the freakiest stuff because if you if you consider that you can be asleep in dreamless sleep, so there's no awareness whatsoever, but your body is still there. But who are you then? And where are you at that point?
yeah, you don't know.
And like in that example, to me, the consciousness seemed to be like an emergent quality that somehow arises in certain conditions. But the body that's asleep, that's alive, that is not conscious, what's that? Is that like a spacesuit that consciousness somehow inhabits, and then it goes away to rest somewhere, and then it comes back for like what reasons? Why is that the
Which is,
cycle?
we still don't know, right? Like, we can understand about how the brain, like, neurons and how it fires and all that. Like, we understand that's the mechanic, but how is that
Yeah,
electric
but the
signal being interpreted, and then we have this experience? It's like, it's crazy. I
yeah
mean, they've done experiment where they activate a certain region of the brain, and then you feel a certain thing, or you can taste a certain thing, or start seeing a color or
so
whatever.
kind of like simulate an experience.
Yeah, so that somehow, but then it's just an electric signal. So how does the brain interpret these signals, in what way to make it like,
Yeah.
you know? So
And what's the difference between those signals and the signals you receive organically, right? That organically happen in the world, which is like, oh, you touch a thing and there are signals. I can feel like there's a pen and it's hard in my hand, but is it there? Or is it just signals that are making it seem
they
that way?
have done, people who are just like, who have, say, lost an arm or whatever, and they simulate their brain signal to send signal to their hand, and they actually felt it. They felt as if they have a hand or something, like they
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
feel the sensation, right? So there's definitely something mechanistic about how the signal being interpreted, and how but what's the exact kind of, how do we describe all of this? This is, we don't know yet, right? Like, you have all these field
Yeah, which
experience.
is just the wildest thing that you can be alive. You can be, we'll say that, yeah, consciousness in this case is directly known in experience. Like just by the fact of, we can say we're conscious, but that means that, to me, that just means that we are aware. You can say to yourself,
You
like,
can
yeah, I'm
say that,
aware this is
yeah.
happening. I'm aware that I'm talking to you, and then there's meaning, etc., etc. So we can be aware and we can be conscious of the fact that we are conscious and aware, but we don't know how it happens or why it happens.
Yeah, so that's the wild part. It's just, you can't figure it out, like, what, how do you figure it out, right? it's like that's the part
Okay, but
where
how does this connect to this? Therefore, subjectivity cannot simply be dismissed as unreal. It's dismissed as unreal. It's not unreal.
well,
Would be what, that it's not there, but
I think that's in correlation to the mental idea that, and again, this is in juxtaposition to the idea of rationalism, of scientific kind of inquiries and methodology of the idea that we can explain everything. That because why would anybody be rejecting about subjectivity? Because the idea they think that this has to be repeatable as an experiment, it has to be quote unquote objectively proven.
okay.
So
So it's
that's how they would reject subjectivity. Like, oh, that's just your opinion. That's just how you
I
know, like
see, I see.
interpret.
So it's pointing to the fact that those criteria of rationalism are not,
You can't explain everything. That's what
they're
they're
not
saying.
valid, essentially. Yeah. So not only that you can't explain everything, which is just such an unpleasant thing to consider, because what is that? That would just mean that you would have to accept your own limitation in
Yeah,
comprehending reality.
yeah. Because some people are very much the hardcore gung ho science type. Like everything can be explained. It's a reason. It's a rational world, logical. There's no way that you can't explain everything away. It's just we haven't found it yet.
Right.
There are people who believe in that, right? And then there are other people who are like, you know, there's things you're never gonna know. You're not gonna. It's not about the instrument. It's not about the like just the fact. For example, we seem to know that there is a quantum effect of observer effect, right? The quantum in the quantum field, somehow observing it changes the nature of its, like why or how is that? That means what? That means if you're not observing, it's a different state. But if you observe it, it appears as that state that you observe. So how are you going to measure it? So meaning that is impossible to measure because the act of observing it changes the what's observed. So you will
Right.
never know what the true the real position will be. So why is it that, right? So and again, it's like everybody is under some kind of illusion, right? We think we know, we think this is how the world works, and we're just arguing against each other about who's right, right?
But no, but we don't know. No, but like nobody knows anything, right?
Yeah,
Until
but
we are able to lead it to somewhere where, I mean, what has science learned, right? The Big Bang, but it is, there's still like the nature of Big Bang is it's matter and energy just emerged from this infinitely condensed point to everything. But that might as well be magic at that point,
yeah.
right? Because what does
So
that mean? How does that
there's
work?
still a
Well,
lot of questions unanswered, right? So again, it's the but I think there is a compulsion for humans to kind of come up with a theory, let's just say, to explain everything
but
away, you know?
like what, not theory, but essentially the question is still like, what happened?
Yeah,
Like
what happened?
where did this, because there's got to be some kind of answer, right? Like what happened?
Yeah, what
The
happened?
Big
So,
Bang, okay, what
but
happened
why?
to,
Right? But
what made
why?
the Big Bang, right? The question is, what made the Big Bang? Because there's got to be an answer, right? How would there not be an answer?
Yeah, so that's the rational thinking, right? The rational thinking
Yeah,
tell you there gotta be an explanation of what happened, why Big Bang happened. There gotta be,
yeah.
so that's the fundamental kind of uh
Yeah, but as opposed to what?
as opposed to that it just happens
That it
without
just
reason,
happened?
but it happened for a reason, right? That's the
It happened to
mind.
a reason, in the sense that there something caused it, right?
Yeah.
Because
So
there
that's the
could have
rational
just
idea.
not be one
So you can't just
if there
say,
was
oh,
no cause.
just because God made it. Well, God made it somehow, right? So God somehow, there's a mechanism
No,
by
but
which
even
God
that,
make it.
even that would be a reason. Like even that would actually be a reason. There is some kind of God, and He decided to make it, and that was, and everything else. Questions about like what's that? Where's that God? How does He live? And what is His universe? And what are the rules there, right? And you can continue exploring of what happened. But it seems to me that if that's not known and that's not defined, it's almost like an artificial cap of like this is a way to sandbox a universe, right? Because then nobody has to define why it happened. It's just
Because it's like,
now there's a
if this
world.
is the universe, that means there's an outside of the universe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a thing, there gotta be something outside of this. So how do you explain this? Again, you're gonna go into infinite in regression. It's like, does it mean it's all like
Okay, but yeah,
Matyushka?
let's
Is
not.
it Matyushka, the doll, like all the way down? Like it was the
Yeah. It could be right, but it's got to be something. That's the point. It's got to be something, right? Because otherwise, we're just what? We're not. We're like what? You give up. You give up, and you like, okay, it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't, but it's still. It's essentially a reconcilable way of thinking. To me, the only thing it means is that you'd have to just give up and not care, or say like, yeah, I can't know it. Which is it's to me, it requires the most amount of humility, or it's kind of like in enlightenment, you kind of exhaust all the effort, right? But I don't know. To me, it still is kind of synonymous with giving up because I don't know. Maybe that is the most kind of rational and real true thing that a human can do is just kind of accept that, well, that's the limit. It seems like we're just not meant to know, you know, or at least for now. I don't know.
or it's just is kind of incomprehensible, I guess.
It's
It's just that
incomprehensible, yes.
where you can't fathom the size. For example, it's just some of the size of these planets that we
Right.
figured that is out there. It's like it's crazy how big they are. So it's like you can't even like mentally kind of envision it.
Yeah.
So
I think the biggest star that we've seen, it essentially it is the size of many, many, many millions of our sun.
yeah,
Millions.
yeah.
Okay?
So
That scale is incomprehensible.
that just again is the edge of our understanding. I mean, we are limited by literally by the speed of light, right? How much you can see out there, right? So there's the observable universe, meaning there's a universe beyond that by which we will never see. I mean, at
Yeah.
least right now, right? If you
Yeah.
don't travel there, you won't be able to see it. So what does that mean to the nature of the universe? Well, that's why there
Yeah.
are so many theories.
There's a lot of unknown there. Therefore, subjectivity cannot simply be dismissed as unreal.
Who's saying it's unreal though, right?
So subjective experience is real in the sense that whatever happens there, just by the fact of you being aware of it and you experiencing it, it's real in that sense, right? I'm okay with. I know that reality itself is a weird term, like because there's so many different ways you can consider it. I mean, this is on the forums I've had so many problems with this discussion because people come in like, oh, what is real? It's like, what do you mean what's real? Like what do you mean by real? Because people say like this is not real. Real in what sense? In a sense that virtual reality set, when you put it on, you see a virtual reality. It's real, but it's virtual because it's generated by, a computer. But it's still real in terms of it exists, right? So to me, real, for the most part, is synonymous with existence. But when it's used in a more kind of spiritual context, like what Buddhists, for example, what they mean by real is they mean unchanging. So the only real reality is unchanging. So the only real self is something that doesn't change. Well, in spiritual world, people mean the awareness itself. the consciousness by which experience is possible is the only real thing, because that's the only thing that doesn't change. You know, if you sit there and you feel cold, that by which you are aware of the cold, the whole medium of consciousness, that's what they say is the only real thing. But of course, as you mentioned before, like for you, it's difficult to even to conceptualize or to be aware of what that is. It's like it's like when you're watching a movie and you're so absorbed by it that you forget that it's a movie. You would have to be aware of the screen surface itself.
Yeah.
That's the metaphor.
At all
so
times.
In this case, yeah. I mean, from what I understand, that's the real meditation.
Right. Okay.
Being
That's a good
aware
metaphor.
Of awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it is a good metaphor.
This is
I
a
like
good
it
metaphor.
as well.
That's, I think, it will be easy
It's
to
popular.
understand what meditation is. Yeah. This is a good way to describe it. It's like watching a movie, but aware that it is a movie at all times of what you're doing right now. That's a buzzkill for sure. Because you can't enjoy the movie. It's just all the time. I'm doing this. I'm watching a movie.
Well,
yep.
Yeah, that is the paradoxical thing, because
this
the
is
question
fake.
becomes
this is a whole bunch of actors doing their thing. Okay, they're just emoting right now. There's a camera.
So dumb.
It's like
so dumb.
It's like meta narrative. Like, I mean, it's like a meta commentary on everything, right?
And I guess let's do a little sidetrack sake of why would you be interested in doing that? And
because you want to be real, right? But the reality, the reality is it is a movie. It is fake. It is illusion.
Why don't you want to be aware of that, right?
But then you're no fun.
So what is fun then? Fun is to pretend.
It is illusion. It is a form of illusion, right? Somehow it's the fantasy. It's not real, but then made real in some ways that you feel, that you feel kind of So I guess meditation is just more like, well, we recognize the real and we want to keep it real, like at all times.
Yeah.
Even if you have to sacrifice your fun, you sacrifice your you sacrifice everything for the realness, right?
Yes.
Are you willing to do that? So that's the.
But then, what do you get out of that? What is the point of that?
You're for real, man.
just the pride of realness.
Being for real, I'm for real.
I'm so for real.
I'm for real.
I never buy into any of this bullcrap. Movies?
No. It's like games? No.
The funny thing is, like the Russian meditation teacher that I had, he did not watch movies.
So ever. Because he sees that it's fake.
Because yes, exactly. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But then when I tried it, I was like, I need my series, bro.
Yeah. Imagine playing game, but like recognizing, okay, this is a game. I'm pressing this button. I'm trying to
it'll be
do
unreal,
this
dude.
for hours. Like not having fun, just for hours.
It would not be doable. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing this, okay, and this one, I'm. If you
actually, let's try it. Let's try it, dude. Let's try playing a game like that.
You can't. I mean, to not get
pressing
absorbed.
These buttons.
Yeah, but at all times, I'm pressing this button. I'm doing this thing. You had to basically commentary on your own actions, right? Because how would you?
So it would have to be some. I mean, what would that do to the experience? It would definitely make it not fun because you just become aware. Like, I mean, I've had people kind of attack video games like this, like saying, "Yeah, you're just mashing buttons. You're just saying you're pressing buttons." Like,
yeah. I mean,
but
physically,
it doesn't feel that way when you absorb and.
It's because you project yourself fully into the game, right?
Yeah.
The narrative, the kind of the structure of the game.
It's crazy that it does happen like that.
Yeah.
But it totally does. But when you do put it like that, it sounds kind of pathetic, and it's crazy, but it is true. You are just sitting there looking into a flat screen and mashing a few same buttons on a keyboard.
Yeah.
And that's the whole
That's the
activity.
whole thing.
And the rest of it is just like a movie that happens kind of within your mind, technically, yeah.
But imagine, right? You can criticize again, going back to the movie and go to the theater. Like it's stupid. You spend money sitting in this thing, noises in your ear, the whole, like, and all these other people sitting there trying to look at this fake thing that's not real. It's like, why would you do it, right?
Dude, they hired a bunch of actors and they
Yeah,
like made all these special
and all
effects
this
and they spliced it
spending
together
this
like
much
in a
money.
way as that it looks like it's
It takes years,
like it's a
dude.
real
It
thing.
takes years, right?
Yeah.
A big theory, like just say,
Millions of dollars.
yeah, like if you multiple movies and then you like got all these people doing doing it in the right way, capture the right light, capture the right sceneries, the right series of
Yeah.
actions. Why would you do it? It's all
Okay, but
fake.
so you could say, to bring it back to a human lens, that it's just an art form and uh, you enjoy art.
It's an
What's wrong with enjoying
interpretation.
art?
It's an interpretation of
But it's an
how.
art also, right? It's like
Yeah,
anything. If you take an art, it is telling some kind of story or narrative or something. It's depicting some kind of something, right? Which
but
always also have,
that's the other thing about story is that it is fictional, but it is talking about the true reality of human existence. That's
yes.
all what literature, art, what it all does is like we're trying to filter this experience of being alive in an quote unquote artful way
Hmm.
so that we can understand it more deeply. So this is something you can't explain it by just explaining it.
Mm.
Because like let's just say like a theme of a movie, we get it after we watch it and we dissect it, but nobody says that this is it. This is the meaning of the movie. You must interpret it this way. You must understand it in this way.
Yeah, they're all interpretations,
Yeah,
right?
but then
Some
the
may be more
beauty of
popular
it
than
is
others.
you understand the message almost
What
intuitively.
was Yeah,
Because
what
if you're
was
being told,
being shown and depicted.
if you're being told what the movie is about, it's like, well, that ruins it, right? You can't just be, oh, this is this story. It's about this. Like, no, no.
Well, it's
There's more
still
to
about
it.
something that's going to be more or less universally recognizable, but there will be
Yeah,
nuances and colorations to it, which will be, up for everybody's interpretation.
and different. Because some of it is almost like you're trying to tell somebody. Okay, let's say a writer writes a story. You're trying to tell them all this whole bunch of stuff about life, but then if you just tell them in bullet points, it's like nobody's gonna have time for like this is boring. Like why you yeah, okay, I get it. Sure, fine. Yeah, that's the reality. Okay, I understand what you're trying to say, but like what's the
So
point? What's the fun of that? Right?
in that regard, then it's connected to emotions.
Yeah. So
The
it's not
emotions
purely
is another big part of reality and enjoyment of it.
so it is playing with illusions, but it is kind of showing you about the true nature. It's like a metaphor, right? It's like it's not it's using what's not real, but showing you the real nature of it. So it's using these it's very human, right? Like they're portraying these human emotions, actors, they're portraying these human emotions in a certain kind of scenario that we can empathize if we were in the same position. It would be like, oh shit, I'll be making the same decision. So don't be so rash to think that you're going to make a different decision, right? Depends on the story of what you're trying to say, right? But some of these kind of truth, let's just say, that applies to humanity socially or what have you, it's almost like we want to understand it by kind of experiencing it in this kind of time-based format,
Okay, yeah.
aka story, whether it's film or whatever now. But it's like tell me the truth, but don't tell me straight up, right? Give me some way to
Yeah,
for me to
the truth
experience it.
is a movie in that sense, or really we can take any art, is kind of like a more engaging simulation of what it would be like, right?
Yeah,
To be part of that experience or interaction. And that, well, one of the things that I see it doing is kind of it would make you more empathetic because you just know what you would, at least you can imagine what it would feel like to be in that situation, be part of like this character and this character. I understand this character, right? I understand why this person did that, because in his shoes I would do that and that. Okay, we could go further into this tangent, I'm sure,
But yeah,
but
it's
yeah, let's bring it back to this. So let's see that therefore subjectivity cannot simply be dismissed as unreal. Yeah, subjectivity is as real to you as it's not as real. It's like, see, like your interpretations of reality and reality, to me, they're still separate things. Your interpretation and your perception is not unreal. Yeah, it's real. So the way you experience fire burning is a real phenomenon, right? It's your experience. It's just your experience. That's subjectivity. Again, there's a lot of these terms that are very, very synonymous with each other.
yeah.
Subjectivity, experience, awareness, consciousness. To me, they're very closely clustered together, you know? What is subjectivity? It's just your own perspective and view and experience of something. So if I'm experiencing, I mean, people can have neurological disorders and they can experience fire as cold. That could happen, but that still doesn't change like the fact that fire burns.
Yeah, you can explain why they experience it that way.
Yeah. So in this sense, subjectivity can be unreal neurologically. There are people who don't experience pain.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's still real in the fact that it's a phenomenon that happens to them
That's
where
something
they
you
don't feel
experience.
pain, right? Like just say they
Yeah.
don't feel pain. That's the fact. Somehow
Yes.
they're that way. So even if they couldn't experience it, to them there's no pain. But you can explain there's a thing going on here. But
Yeah.
so I don't know.
But real
Again, it's again about semantic as well. The language we use, like what do you mean by
yeah.
unreal, and how, according to what
This
is it
is where
unreal?
you see, like, this is where I think this is dangerous stuff happening, because
Words that are
if you do
can
not
trip up.
split, if you do not think on the meaning of these words, you could accept this stuff. But what do you actually accept? What do you mean by this, right? This is why I'm trying to drill down
Yeah.
by this and trying to get into these examples, because I want to be specific about what I am understanding and what I'm interpreting and what I'm willing to accept as fact. So this is why I would differentiate that subjective experience is as real. It's a real experience, and if you experience it, by de facto, it's real in the sense, because if it wasn't real, you wouldn't experience it. But it's not correlated to reality 100%.
Not 100%.
And reality is more real than your subjective experience.
But the thing is, everything is subjective, though, because we are experiencing everything via subject experience. So the so-called objective is really an extraction of these subjective experiences being correlated with a consensus and being stated as the truth, right? Because most of us will experience that, right?
Yeah.
It's not 100%.
But let's take this example again with the fire, and you don't feel pain. You don't feel pain. You put your hand in the fire. Your experience is that you don't feel anything, but the reality is that your hand is burning.
The organic matter gets, incinerated.
There's no conflict between subjective experience here, because you can still see that your hand is being burned. You just don't feel it. They're not really. So there's some kind of layer of interpretation that has to do something with here, because a rational
first.
Because a person, let's just say a person who is interested in their own well-being, which what you would call rational, would still withdraw the hand from the fire. But if that person doesn't even know what pain is,
okay, let's
that
just
would
say
be a whole different story.
You have a whole bunch of people. You have one person who has this condition where he doesn't feel anything. So he's telling guys, if I put my hand in this fire, I don't feel. You don't feel anything, because according to him,
and that's reality.
This is reality. But then other people like, bro, no. What do you mean?
Well, they feel it.
I feel it. It's like, wait, what? So you will know the difference now that
That would be just
something
a
going on with that
different
person.
neurological configuration.
Yeah, because everybody does this, they burn themselves. So everybody know you're not supposed to put your hand in the fire, but just this one person who in his whole world that doesn't exist because he never feel anything, so he wouldn't know. So the first time he does it, he would be telling other people, bro, you don't get burned. Like this, I don't feel anything.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, something's wrong with you because everybody else has the consensus, has the knowledge that you get burned. That's just common knowledge because everybody got burned, right? So only that person has the subjective experience where he doesn't.
What is interesting then to think about is that person's reality is in a sense different from the other people, because in his reality, pain doesn't exist.
But then he will be reminded by the other people that you are not normal.
By the fact that the physical reality still hurts you.
Yeah.
Because that's still your body and your capacity to do stuff.
You just how you feel or how you experience it, right?
Yeah. Okay. I don't see any problems here. But so we still have perceptions, capacity and capability for perception, which can be different. You know, some people are sensitive, some people are not sensitive. And there's reality, which, regardless of your sensitivity, affects you according to its physical properties.
I just feel
radiation affects you no matter how you feel about it.
Yeah. I just feel like maybe this is just because it's a summary here, but it feels like this is kind of dealing with the absolute, right? And only a this will deal with the absolute, right? Where the idea is almost, this is kind of, is saying that this is the absolutely what is being described, right? Whether this is real or unreal. But the reality is that it's very much a mixed bag, right? Because subjectivity can be as valid because it's how everybody experiences everything. But then you do have to correlate that with other people's subjectivity to form a consensus to know what the objective kind of more or less what the world is.
I still don't understand what it's trying to point out to. This is supposed to be a specific thing, like cannot be dismissed as unreal.
Because in this way, he's still trying to make it into a rule, saying this is absolute applies at all times, but it doesn't, right? I mean, I just think that there always going to be an asterisk you're going to have to put on the end of it because it doesn't explain entirely in every situation.
It doesn't apply to all the cases,
which it itself already says, right? It cannot be formalized. So in the same way, yeah. So it's almost like the act of trying to figure it out is already like you already kind of broke the rule, right? Because what you're trying to formulate cannot be formalized, but you're trying anyway. That's just kind of how humans do, right? Like we try to figure it out, but
so in those videos, he was saying that he argued that rationalism often treats first-person experience as less real just because it is not easily formalized, quantified, or publicly verified, but it is again less real. His counterpoint is that qualities like redness, taste, and conscious awareness are directly present in experience, so a theory of reality cannot simply erase them by calling them mere subjectivity. Okay, so if consciousness, felt experience, and inner life are the very place where reality is encountered, then dismissing subjectivity as unreal throws away part of the data you're trying to explain. Okay. So in his framework, subjectivity may be fallible, but is still foundational. I think it just still points to the fact that everything happens in your subjective experience. So, and you cannot dismiss it. I'm okay with that. It's just
by degrees. By what degrees?
It is. It's part of the meditation practice as well, right? Be aware of your experience. You can do different stuff in there, but you can completely also leave it alone and do nothing with it. No interpretations, no reactions, no nothing. And it will be, it's real in a sense that if it happens, it's real in some sense. I'll leave it at that, right? Leave it at that because otherwise it's getting crazy.
I just think that according to, I mean, if you want to, how I think of it is like, okay, we all deal with illusions in our lives, but I think the idea is more like, okay, you got to specifically deal with yours. So don't get distracted by other people's illusions, you
Okay,
know?
dude, I want to talk about another example. Let's see. Say I encounter like a woman, in the world outside, and then I think like, oh, she's so beautiful, and then I think to myself, oh, I bet she likes me or something. What about that?
That's
That
a
is,
total delusion, man.
uh, thanks.
Until proven otherwise, right?
That's
Because
what I'm saying.
if
But
she
it's
if she's actually into you and she does make the effort to kind of approach you and get to know you, and you end up being together, then okay, right? Because you can read the sign, you can find out. Oh, but you can't just be like, oh, she is beautiful, and therefore, I mean, how? How
but
does
this
that?
stuff happens every day.
Yeah, there are people who think
So what
like that,
about that
right?
subjective experience?
That just means that is delusional, right? To the point of it's so detached from the real. Like we all are under some kind of illusion, okay, yes, but
That's
there's a
that's what I'm
degrees to
saying. That
this.
like in this sense, this would be your subjective view experience, wishful thinking, whatever you want to call it, right? But at the very least, you can say there's a thought that I had. I think this girl likes me, for whatever reason you think that. That can be completely,
False.
yeah, that can be completely dismissed as unreal in a sense that it's real in a sense that you have the thought, but it's unreal because that girl actually doesn't like you. So I think
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
point does not pass it.
It
I think it's
depends
bullshit.
on the situation of what you're talking about as
Yeah, I
real
don't
or
think it's
unreal,
it's
right?
yeah it's
So is thought dependent. So the
yeah
thought of this guy thinking that she's into him when the reality is not, then that's delusional, right? And you did have the thought. You had an delusional thought. That's real. But the thought itself is so not correlated with reality that it's just so far off that it's not. So basically, meaning that person, either he's going to hit the wall and find out it's not real. Well, I mean, he's going to find out somehow, right?
yeah.
If he thinks this way and he pursues that woman going to let
But
him
also,
know that,
what could happen is that this belief would make him so confident that he would make her like him.
yeah, that could be.
So that could
See,
happen,
that's the part where you're dealing with all these unknown factors, right? Because it's
right?
like, well, you won't know another person's mind. So you don't know that she's not into you,
Yeah,
right? But so that means you're going to have to find out why that is. But then, yeah, that delusion might contribute to the fact that
it could make it reality.
it make it into a reality because you did, uh, you are confident because of that. And then you did want to ask her out and then it actually worked out.
Yeah,
But
but you would
then
never
it's like,
know.
but you wouldn't know until you talk to the girl. It's like, hey, tell me for real, did you like me when you first saw me, or did we kind of develop this thing
But
into
the
a
thing
thing?
is, like, even she might not know at that
Yeah,
point
even she might not know. She's
because
like,
that
can't
realm
quantify
of
this.
psychology is always changes. Your memories when you recall them, they change. Like
Yeah,
everything is
it could
so
be like she didn't like him at first,
yeah, it's so fluid and unfoundational that you can't find purchase in anything to say like it's like this or it's like that.
which is
Okay,
why the scientific method is always you got to repeat the experiment with variables that are known, and they
yeah.
keep happening,
So
and
in
then you
that
can prove it.
sense, it's limited and it has some applications to dealing with physical world. But yes, you cannot you cannot have a science of love, right? You
It's
cannot.
like correlation doesn't mean causation, right? That's the
Yeah,
simplest,
yeah,
scientific understanding. Like, yeah, just because something seems like it's the cause, that doesn't mean it's the cause. Like, even if it's like very much correlated, it doesn't mean it's completely true.
yeah.
So the cause might be
So
very different.
yeah, I'm still fuzzy on this point, but like to this overall bigger point, first person experience is irreducible. What exactly does that mean to you?
Irreducible to what?
It
Not be
means like
able to
irreducible to anything else. It's like it's I guess it's like a unique thing, right?
fundamental, meaning that it's fundamental. You
Yeah.
can't reduce it to any smaller. But then what does that even mean?
Yeah, why is that a thing? First person experience is irreducible. Yeah, you cannot break it down into anything else. Experience.
But that experience can be interpreted in many different ways, you know?
Right, right, right. But the point is that it's like, it kind of like, that's what is also emphasized in the spiritual traditions, that direct experience is the thing. It's no matter how much you
Okay.
put it into
Well,
words, right?
then sure. Yeah,
Yes.
because that's how you experience things anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Qualia is a unique thing that it cannot be, reduced. So we can accept that. That's fine. Science uses limited frames. Like it isolates variables, studies narrow contexts, useful for technical problems. Yeah, all of that is
Yeah,
fine.
that's true.
But narrow framing excludes total context. Yeah, that makes sense. And the observer and the observer's assumption are usually left out. That's where it's
That's why it's
trying.
testing, right? It's
Yeah,
testing, limit the factors so you can test specifically for this.
observer's assumptions are usually left out. Yeah,
Yeah,
as
because
opposed to what?
you try to prove a thing is real or not. So it doesn't matter what you assume
And yeah,
because,
I wouldn't agree with that, because the whole, you start with assumptions,
well, okay, sure, but the
right?
assumption can be proven wrong, right? So
Yeah,
it's more like we're testing it whether or not the assumption is true.
but
So
like, observer's assumptions are left out. I mean, no, never, right? The only real circumstance where we even become aware of this whole problem is that one experiment.
So is this what he actually says? Or this is just a summary of, because again, it go back to the, are we dissecting the word here or is it just the idea, right? Because when usually left out as in what? Left out as in not considered
Not
or
considered, yeah, yeah. By science, right? So science does not account for it. Doesn't deal with. It's not a variable. Like observer and their assumptions are not variables in
okay. Yeah, they
in
were
doing
trying to
science.
eliminate the assumptions, essentially its influence on the experiment, right?
Right. So it treats an observer as like as a neutral, just
Yeah.
camera, just
Yeah.
seeing how reality
But again, the
behaves.
limitation is like when it comes to again quantum mechanics, that doesn't apply because the very act of observing affects the results. So you can't even left the assumption out. You can't even left the observation out. That's just influence the thing no matter what. So
But in, in the case of that experiment, the double slit experiment, the behavior of the particles is different from the assumptions of the observer. So it behaves like that counter to the assumptions. So essentially, in other words, the assumptions don't matter still.
yeah, because assumptions is just that's how you think will happen. And the
Yeah.
reason why you do experiment is just to prove it whether or not it's true. So yeah, assumptions is just what you think. That doesn't really, I mean,
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, so in this case, would science, why would it need to account for observer and their assumptions? What would that do?
it's a margin of error basically. As far as um, conducting science is, you want to eliminate the kind of human errors or the sort of kind of things that are going to skew the results. You know, because you just want the result itself
Yeah,
in a
but that would
technical.
be, that's part of the interpretation part. But that's the whole point of science, is that it builds, like, when you design experiments, like it's a whole process. Like, I'm not even familiar with it, but I know it's complex as hell, because it has to be so rigorous where like it's foolproof, right? So, but on the example of, say, double slit experiment, the particles behave there, how they behave, regardless of observers' assumptions. The only thing that does make influence and impact, it seems, is the act of observation itself. The act of measurement, right? The act of measuring, like what is happening in that level of reality, it seems to affect the behavior of the particles.
Yeah.
So I would give the observer, maybe that's the only instance, and we don't know what's going on at that level, because maybe just that's the level where there are just different rules, and we're just trying to, drill into that. But maybe that points out to the limit of science. So I'll give it that, right? Okay. Science is limited. It deals
Of
with narrow
course,
contexts.
it's an instrument that specifically for finding out, via experiments, certain phenomenons of how it happens. So yeah, it's a limited tool. You can't use. It's like a scalpel is a scalpel. A hammer is a hammer. Like it
Right,
does
right.
its specific roles. You can't just use a hammer for everything, right? So
Yeah. But I'm trying to like understand also what does that mean? So science uses limited frames. What is the
what he's implying,
poignance of this
you can't use science for everything.
for everything?
You can't
Okay, that's fine.
understand the world just purely with
Okay, okay,
science.
okay. So that's fine. That's fine. I think that's okay. That makes sense. Uh, Models are mistaken for reality. Yeah, that's also is a known, famous kind of bias. That concepts simplify reality. It's a way to think of reality, right? That I I agree that reality is much more complex than what we can even conceive of, in our head, because I've experienced some thoughts so big that they don't always fit in your head. Like some of those sensations and experiences feel like that. Feel like, oh, there's much more of reality than I can comprehend. You feel that physical limitation almost, right? Definitions are looser and less final than they appear. Yeah, that's why we constantly run into
Can't
this
define that
problem.
this
Definitions and finality, right? Because you can always like keep pulling that string of what exactly it means. Formal systems make mistake maps for territory. Again, to me, that just goes back to the limitation of human-centered approach to understanding everything. Yeah, it's easier to think that way. It's a bias. Essentially, it's a bias, right? Therefore, rational and scientific models are partial constructions. Yeah, that's fine. That's just our best attempt at dissecting the physical aspects, because that's where that specific instrument was able to apply itself, right? Or we were able to apply it. Because what else are you going to do? You see the thing. Let's zoom into it. There's a thing. What is it? What is it? What is it made of? It's just that. It's us seeing the physical world and us drilling into it. That's all it is. And us trying to, I guess, approximate and represent it
yeah
in some kind of
for
manipulable
easier
ways.
kind of
Yes.
easier understanding, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to recognize as a whole like what was all this, right? You got to reduce it to diagrams and sort of easy understandable kind of ways. That's just like, for example, the diagram for the electron. The actual realistic one is like a cloud. It's not just the one that you usually see, right? Like with the protons, and then you have this.
Yeah, well, for that one especially, like that we can't perceive it or see it in any other way anyway. So when
Yeah,
you study it, it's not like anybody can open a book and see an electron with a microscope built in, right? You got to be able
yeah,
to like point to it. It's like we're talking about this thing,
yeah.
and it's kind
So
of
it
like
has to
this.
be visualized and kind of
Yeah.
corrected, and yeah. So
So partial constructions, that's fine. Yeah, those are just representations. Uh, Mind constructs distinctions. So this is a bit more interesting and tricky. Mind creates categories. Yes, yes. Just as we were talking,
compartmentalize everything. Yep. It's so that
it's just, yeah, it's
understand
just
it.
a labeling, right? It's a
Yeah.
labeling. When you're seeing, and you can categorize and label in many different ways, but it is that labeling and kind of distinction. Divides subject and object. Yeah. I mean, yes.
It's even in the language, you have an object, subject, matter, right? It's something did something to something else. Is it a thing? Is it, there's a verb, there's
Yeah,
a,
we
so
do that
right. So you in the construction, everything
all
is
the time.
divided because you need to divide everything into categories. Therefore, everything has a thing. I have an I, there's a she, there's a he, right? Like you define and categorize all these things as a, with a name, right? And then there's action describing the action, but they're in reality is just how would you describe reality, right? I pick up
Right.
a cup and I drink from it.
Yeah.
So I drink from the cup. That's
Yeah.
describing it, but it's
Yeah.
the action in itself is just the action. You did this thing, but then you had to define
Okay.
everything.
Yeah, this one is going to be tricky because it's like it's connected to this mind projects boundaries and then treats them as objectively real. This is the one I don't understand. As opposed to what? Like if you just describe, you drink tea from a cup, isn't that what happened?
Yeah, but imagine.
What else would you?
But then you got imagine. But then because you mind reduce everything so simply as just a cup is a cup, the tea is the tea. But no, it's
No, what?
molecules, it's protons, it's electrons, it's all these things. Like
Yeah.
but you can't. You have to name it. You have to a cup. You just basically remove all the constituency of what constitute a cup. The material is made of. You just reduce it to the function, right? It's a cup. I use it to drink water. Okay. So the mind would have is reductive by nature, right? Like you will reduce everything to quantities.
That's just what human reality is. Like if we somehow
Yeah.
were, say,
So
if we were another creature and we saw no differentiation, we just saw, I don't know, atoms and molecules or something. But then how would anything be? Everything would just be one
yeah,
soup of everything that's being
exactly.
the same.
That's the real. That's the what's real.
Yeah.
But you have to divide it up into sub categories and things so you can actually use stuff and manipulate the world. Otherwise, you will not be able to distinguish
Therefore, the
anything.
world we perceive is shaped by mind's distinctions. Okay, sure. I mean, they're distinctions, but it kind of points to this little paradox that what comes first? Are the distinctions there first? Or is the mind doing it? Because, I mean, if the mind is doing it automatically, it's the same as, well, it doesn't matter then. Like, what are you going to do with this information? Again, it goes back to that. Technically, is it doing the distinctions? Are we actively doing the distinctions? I don't know. I was just born in here, and there are all the distinctions already there.
Well, you learn these stuff, right? Your parents teach you, your school, and society
Yeah,
teaches
but
you all these.
what would be something else if not that?
Yeah, it's still that. It just you call things by different names, sure, but they're still being reduced as objects, right?
Yeah, but you could. I mean, it's kind of like, guess, similar to the movie screen metaphor, right? You could say like, oh yeah, all of this is just atoms and energy,
Right.
but then what?
Exactly. You can't use that.
Yeah,
Like even if you comprehend the reality, okay, yeah, this is I see atoms, I see all these things, but then there's no distinguishment from
it still goes
anything.
back to how you are
You're gonna use it.
interacting
How are you gonna?
with the
Yeah.
environment.
What's the practical reality? Because the mind constructs the
Yeah,
practical reality.
just like the fact that there's like cosmic background radiation is there, but I don't care. That doesn't do anything for me.
Imagine, right? If I can't comprehend what I'm seeing right now, that's just
Yeah,
words. I mean,
then you die soon.
yeah,
That's
it's
what's gonna happen.
word, but then it's really just a light projection. It's whatever scientifically you explain this, right? It's signals
Yeah,
going into my
yeah.
eyes. But then if I don't recognize words, if I don't recall what that word means, I see nothing. I don't
You would be
understand
blind.
anything at all.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So
You would not even see it.
why am
You
I
would
even
not
having a
recognize it as.
conversation? Because I know I'm having a conversation with you via technology. Otherwise, what am I doing right now? I wouldn't know, right? What's
Yeah,
this thing? Why do I
yeah.
even.
The meaning could go away essentially, and I know it happened because you know there's been cases in human history where people had damaged brains and this and
You
that,
stop
and it.
recognizing patterns. You stop,
Yeah,
and you can't function. You're like nothing is nothing.
yeah,
Like, you
yeah,
can't figure it out. What's what?
yeah. So in that sense, there's definitely some kind of interpretation, distinction, etc., 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 mechanisms happening in the brain or whatever, right? But they're
Because
definitely
it's like
happening. That's
you
that's
can't.
correct.
It's like that. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle reality because reality is too much. You have to reduce it to
But it's
understandable chunks.
yeah, but it's still just filtered to whatever humans are able to deal with.
Yeah.
But the question is, by what mechanism, right? Is something applying it? Is that like, why is it like that? It still goes back to that, right? But it's a fact that that's just a human reality. We see what we see, but
And you reduce it
our
to a worldview, to a thing that you recognize, right? These names that when you're recalling will give you the idea of what it represents, right? Like you
yes, but
understand, like every day you go out there, interact with the world. So okay, I have this job, I do this job for this client, so I'm doing this action that's
let's say
economical,
like
but
we just have words. It's just language. A lot of it is just language. But let's consider this: humans live on a planet Earth. It doesn't matter how you call all these parts, but it is a reality that there is this
right,
planet,
yeah.
and then there's these humans on this planet. That's just a way to describe it, sure, but it is a fact and reality, though, right?
As far as we know, unless you factor in Matrix. I mean, if the Matrix is real, then sure,
Not the
there's that.
Matrix again.
But as far as we can observe, right? Like just say in our direct experience, this seems to be the case. We have the Earth, we have a solar system, we
That's what
are
I'm
part of
saying.
this, right? So that's the common consensus that we have reached, right? Where if you're not like if you're somehow if you're somewhat scientifically minded, you would agree that this is the model of the world. That so far that we. Otherwise, you go into flat Earth and blah blah blah, all kind of crazy theories. But as far as
Yeah.
humans can
But
prove,
yeah, to me, this whole thing, it doesn't really like,
because
doesn't
I know
make,
sometimes this feels like duh. Well, yeah, this is
yeah, yeah.
exactly what it is. But I get what he's trying to do. It's like, okay, we got to make distinctions and make sure everything, figure out what all these parts are. But
World we perceive is shaped by mind's distinctions. Yeah, I mean, it
exactly,
is
you act
true.
out the way that you perceive it, right? You do things according to what the mind perceives, because it takes
Yes, okay.
it takes extra energy and extra way of distinguishing things from what you usually would view things
There is no
as.
usually. There is no usually. There's just what's happening.
Well, yes,
And
but
what's
then,
happening,
but
the
what's
mind is
happening
making those
is a
distinctions.
way by which you operate in the real world. But if you sit back, you start understand, okay, what is the economy? What are these factors? Then you can extract extra information about what humans are doing. But fundamentally, what you are doing is only because you perceive the world in this way, in a way by which you can operate in the world, and you're not factoring in all the other stuff that's kind of like
Yeah.
it. You try to
But
zoom into.
also like when if say you decided to think about economy, you kind of, there's a distinction of the concept of economy, right? And then within economy, there's so many concepts and so many other distinctions that you would make to consider the whole concept of economy. And you perceive it.
You perceive it as, I must do this job to make money to buy
No, no, no.
necessities.
Those are all others. Those like convictions and other thoughts. And I'm still trying to go about the perception, how it's shaped by these distinctions, because that's where he's pointing to. And I'm not comfortable with the fact that it's shaped to what extent, essentially, right? The world we perceive is shaped by mind's distinctions. As I'm trying to figure out, like, as opposed to what, because
Because
the
you're
all
not comprehending, as far as I'm understanding, is you're not comprehending the world via a complicated, which is the reality. You're not comprehending everything at once. All you're doing is reduce it to the way that you can
but what
understand.
would be comprehending it? Would it be comprehend everything at once? Would mean what?
It's like the idea that we just, like what we're saying. You watch a movie and recognizing that it's a movie. That's what you have to apply if you were for real, by not going into distinctions and just understanding what you're doing, right?
I mean, dude, but then you
But
jump into conclusions here.
this is how okay, this is just my interpretation, right? This is how I am understanding it. So what I understand from this is like, the world is the way you perceive the world does kind of alter how you act in the world, right? Because there are many different ways. I mean, there just like we said, the mind distinguishes things into simpler categories, and we operate by dismissing what's like. Okay, a cup again. A
But
cup
that
is a
would be
cup.
the simplest interpretation by seeing it as one big movie. That would mean like no computational power is spent on that. But
Yeah,
that doesn't make it true. That doesn't make it so. It just makes that you just chose to see it that way for some reason.
right. But then you do your action in the real world. Like imagine, right? Everybody, most of the time, they wake up, they operate on the level of what am I gonna do for the job? I'm
Subjective,
dealing
yeah.
with the job stuff that makes me money. That's all you care about,
Specifics.
right? You don't think about, oh, today is gonna be an eclipse. There's gonna be a whatever else that the world is happening. You're like, oh, you reduce the life to your function as a role in your
But
job.
you have limited attention.
Exactly. That's
And you
why.
need to survive. You need to
Right.
feed
That's why
your
is
body and
everything is
stuff.
reduced to this level. But then
Limited
all
time.
your actions are just to perpetuate this. You forgot about
Yeah.
all the other part of the world that's happening and all the other stuff,
Yeah.
right? Meaning that your actions are not accounting for all the other stuff. You're just focusing on this
But
narrow.
you can't fit all the other stuff in the world in your attention
Right.
anyway.
Which is you can't. Meaning that no matter
If
what.
you are set and you have don't have to work anymore and you sit down, you're not going to be able to be aware of that much.
Yeah, exactly. Because it takes attention to like, oh, I recognize this. I'm trying to recognize the particle, but then you can't see it, right? You don't see it any differently. It's only a mental
Yeah.
distinction. Oh, it's a cup and it's
Yeah.
not a cup. Guys, remember there was the artwork, right? It's like, this
Yeah.
is not a pipe. It's true. It's a painting of a pipe. It's true. It's not a pipe. So it's that idea of like, this is part, I do see what it means here. It's just that your
Well, tell me
actions
what
are,
it means.
the actions are being directed by how you perceive things, because that's how your understanding determines how you're going to act on the information. If you certain thing you don't know, you're not going to act on it. So the more you
Right.
know, and perhaps you can build a better
World
model,
perceived is
a
shaped by
better
mind's
structure.
distinctions. So I understand it from the standpoint that the knowledge affects your behavior,
Yeah.
understanding, etc. Right. So if I'm like again, the microbe example was is that if you're aware, if you distinguish the microbes to be a part of reality, that allows you to adjust for that reality. But if you're not aware of that distinction, it doesn't absolve you of the effects of microbes. So it's the world you perceive is shaped, but it still does not do anything for the relationship of reality to
Okay,
you.
but here's another example. Okay, let's just say I don't know anything about cars. All right, and I think I can fix something about the wheel, so I play around with it. And because I don't know how it works, I fucked it up. And then I drive that car, I go into an accident, and then I'm crippled. That's because I didn't understand how things work, and I still operate under the assumption that I know, or I think I know I can fix this. And the consequences is that I'm crippled. That real world thing affect me, but because I operate on the perception that I think I know what I did, I think I know I fixed it, but you didn't, because you didn't understand how it's supposed to work. You think you know, but that, yeah, it is real consequences. But then I suffer that consequence because I don't know it.
Yeah, but that doesn't do anything for this argument. It's just a misinterpretation, you know. It's just an error on understanding the reality. But this claims that this is more fundamental here. It claims that all of the boundaries a mind projected, and it's like the whole thing is like simulated. Like your world perception is just a simulation. It's not reality itself. Which I'm fine with that.
Sure.
But in your example, that simulation is just different from reality, right? It's
Right.
decoupled from reality. That's all it means. So maybe we're overthinking this point,
Okay.
and we can, yeah. You like in your example, you created these distinctions according to some kind of rules. They were just erroneous, but that's where the construction. Okay, let's leave it at that. I think that's fine. It's true that you construct your worldview. I'm just not sure what's the emphasis on distinctions here, Distinctions are there always. They're always part of human
Yeah, this
reality.
seems like truism that's just, yeah, of course, right? Duh. Yeah, the
Yeah.
world you perceive is shaped by the distinction that you make.
Yeah. That part is okay.
So I don't know what's the...
But the boundaries and distinctions, that's the part that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
As objectively real.
Right. So your mind understand it as real as it can comprehend it, because that's just how... It again goes back to the signified is not the signifier, right? The idea that the reality, it's what it is, but you are trying to project a way to interpret how it works.
So maybe okay. I think this points more towards the habitual. The mind habitually projects these boundaries and treats them as real.
Because for it to make sense, I had to treat it as real, right? Because people don't think things as, oh, I'm doing this fake thing. Because doing something that's not real, it actually takes more energy and action to make it, like you're actively trying to make it into a falsehood. Like you're trying to, what I'm saying is you're trying to deceive somebody, right? But the actual thing, yeah, I don't think anybody wake up and think that reality isn't real necessarily. Like you treat your reality like, okay, this is real. I'm doing this. This is how things work, right?
Nobody thinks about this.
Exactly.
Apart from really bored philosophers.
Yeah, you're overthinking everything, right? This is just overthinking.
The fact that you can do this.
Yeah.
That's the frustrating part.
It's a waste of mental space.
So I'm trying to break down this idea further. The basic idea is a boundary is a distinction, such as me versus not me, mind versus matter, cat versus dog. So he argues that rationalism often assumes these divisions are crisp, mind-independent facts instead of noticing that the mind itself helps generate and stabilize them through concepts, definitions, and framing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think he's just pointing into this underlying automatic habitual process of how the mind works. But the problem with that is that it's not obvious and demonstrable. So let's see. This is close to what philosophy calls the mind projection fallacy, where someone projects a subjective judgment, a way of seeing onto the world, and then treats it as an inherent property of reality itself. That's what I have problem with.
That's what everybody does, though, right? We all project as a way of seeing the world as...
No, but then if you do that, you are delusional, where it doesn't match reality,
Okay, if only it doesn't match, right? So
But dude, whenever reality lets you know.
Sure.
When you're not in tune with it.
I know, but I'm thinking how I'm thinking about it is that we're always delusional, okay? At all times, we formulate this kind of way of interpreting the world. Your perception is just a specific way the brain interprets everything, and it makes a picture for you, right? And we can make it match more or less to reality. That's basically called you're sane. You're not insane, right? Because when you're insane, it means that your picture of the world, your mental projection are so out of whack that you're just full on delusion, right? So we are all delusional in ways that kind of minor, right? Like we adjust to what we observe, and we adjust it to the level of reality, quote unquote, that we understand. So meaning that if you are...
Yeah, like in this sense, your self-image can be delusional.
Yeah,
as in...
exactly.
But even then, it's still also up for interpretation. But it's delusional in the sense that, you can think of I am the best chess player in the world, but for that to be true, you'd need to be actually prove it in a world where humans, a bunch of masters can beat you, and you should be able to beat them. So that. right? That's what the definition of delusion is. But that's what, to me, that's what this guy is talking about, that, trying to drill into the examples here. So if we take the boundary between self and the world, his point is not that this boundary is useless, but that the mind experiences it so automatically that it mistakes a practical distinctions for an ultimate metaphysical fact. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is what I think he's doing. But then, to me, it still goes back to what's physically real and provable and demonstrable. You can think yourself to be as one with the world, but what does that do for anything? That's what I'm saying. This is where the whole thing falls
Practically
apart.
speaking, I don't think there's anything. It doesn't matter how you think about it, right? It
You
doesn't
still got to
matter
go to
what
work
your
tomorrow.
opinion. Yeah, I still got big ass bills.
Why does the world so shitty then that if it's one with you, you have to go to work like that?
Still have bills. I
Yeah.
mean, but that's but that's the dealing with the reality that the fundamental. I mean, the practical reality, right? Like this is the world that we create in the modern world. It's a society by which everybody is a cog in the machine working on their job that's very specified to serve a function for other people, services,
I
and
mean,
things. And
maybe both things can be true at the same time, right? That could also be the case. So I'll give it the benefit of the doubt there. But still, the question is, what is this for? What is the point of any of this?
well, this is where you come to unanswerable part of this, where there is
I
no, I mean,
think
how.
because the answers could be plethora, right? The answers could be somebody was bored and they felt like feeling one with the world, and now they can't because reasons. But that's what I don't know what to do with that.
So, look, I just think that, if you ask me, my gut feeling is that any of this endeavor is really pointless.
Yeah,
And I mean this not by a pejorative way. I'm just saying there is no point. As far as I'm concerned, how I understand everything, right? From my kind of quote unquote absurdist point of view, is like, yeah, these are exercises and they're fun,
in
but
creativity.
yeah, but then it doesn't, I don't think you can answer it. I mean, people have tried, right? You can try to formulate this and maybe it will feel, maybe that this for some people, it will make them sleep better if they think they figured it out, right? If they think that this makes sense, this everything
I
is
think
being
that might be one of those cases. Yeah, it's just
tied
for
with
that.
a bow. It's like, oh, nice. Okay, I don't have to think about it
Yes, it's
anymore.
all one.
It's all
Perfect.
one. Okay, that's it.
Done.
That's it. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Okay.
It's solved.
Okay. That's
But then
interesting.
you
Yeah.
still living a delusion, right? What do you mean solve?
You
Solve
still
in
do
what
all
way?
the same things. Yeah.
That's just your opinion, man. Like it's always that. It's you can't get away from that. It's just like I don't know. We can make these distinctions. We can kind of understand how these or how the brain kind of make these pictures for us. But it's like, but it's always a lens, right? It's always through a lens by which it's interpreted. So there's no way you can see the reality for real because your eyes doesn't have the resolution for it.
Yeah.
So all these technology glasses, like, I have myopic eyes. Like, close by I can see it, far away I can't see it. That's the natural defect. I use technology,
That's
I can
just
see.
what's there. Yeah.
So in the same way, we all have rose tinted glass, man. Everybody is
Yeah.
born with a lens of filtering what the world, what they think the world is. The world is always just that a little bit distance away from them. They just can't. You can't
Yeah.
touch it. You want to
Yeah.
touch the fish, you can't touch it. They're just always out of bound, right? So I mean, I don't know. I this is the part of I don't know. This is in
Kind
for
of
me.
philosophy, essentially.
For me, it's almost like it's like spiritual nihilism or something. I'm like, yeah, spirituality is cool, but it's kind of useless. It's almost
Yeah.
like there's no way you can find out the
Like, what
answer,
are you gonna do with that?
and how you're gonna But then again, it depends on your goal, right? Like if you believe something so fervently, it's like, okay, there's an afterlife, then sure, your action will be different because you perceive it as in that model, then you will do things differently, right? If you perceive that there is no afterlife, you will think and do things differently again.
Yeah, it does affect your
Right. So
behavior.
whether you believe in Buddhism, whether you believe in any of this religion or spiritual ways, it does affect how you think about things. That's for sure. You know, but
Okay.
ultimately, experientially, in your personal subjective experience, doesn't make any difference what that belief is. I mean, it does change how you project your duration of your life, but by the end of it, I don't think you fundamentally. I mean, I don't know. That's just my view.
Right.
But obviously, if you believe there's a continuation after death, then okay, then sure, there might be a way.
Yeah, this just goes back to beliefs. So this is the
Yeah,
part that, but this is the part that essentially, I think that's the only really interesting part of this discussion is that what does your belief do to your reality, right?
yeah. Which
But
is a
this,
lot
okay,
because the
yeah,
understanding changes a lot how you
yeah,
think and how you
but that's
act. That's
essentially
for
what I'm
sure.
trying to understand, right? Like, what would be the difference in your reality if you do believe this stuff for whatever reason, right? But this part about this habitual mind behavior, I think I remember reading about this before as well. Yeah, that this is what's happening. This makes sense. Um, to point out why this matters, like why this is pointed out. Once the mind treats its own distinctions as objectively final, it becomes blind to deeper possibilities, such as the idea that subject and object may not be ultimately separate. Yeah, but this is just maybe schmaybe, you
Yeah,
know? This is where it's like one of the bigger leaps
because
into,
to me, it's like it's kind of a wishful thinking in my point of view
yeah, yeah.
to think that we can merge this kind of the boundary between with the subjective, objective, whatever, or just kind of like because to me, it's always reality is what it is, but you are the observer. You are part of the world, yes, but you are still separate in the way that you are perceiving everything.
Well,
Of
this is what the guy argues about, right? This is a big contention point. A good way to test the idea is to ask, is this boundary something I directly found in reality, or is it partly a concept my mind is using to make sense of reality? Hmm.
so it's still using detecting in the real world, like you're testing the
I
validity
like
of.
that. Yeah, I like that emphasis on your own experience. This is curious. Is this boundary something I directly found in reality? For example, between the world and self. How would you answer that question? How would you measure
It's
the one
specific
way
to
or the on
the
another?
context, right? To the situation.
No, but what context? Pick any context. Is this boundary between the world and you detectable in reality? I don't know. It's detectable because my body is separate from everything else, so that's the boundary, right?
I think
Open and shut case.
the distinction is that the fact that there is cognition, you have to perceive and understand it. That's the difference. Like you are part of the real world. You are acting in the world. You are the world. You are part of all the atom that constitute your body, your mind, and everything. You
Yes.
are the world. But you here the distinction is that somehow there is consciousness now, and you are making specific, separate distinctions for stuff now. It's like the idea that you are the universe looking back, but then somehow you start dividing the world into things, into the different
But it's
categories.
it's still a fact that my perception is contained within my body.
Yeah.
And my experience of everything is contained within my body. And
It's a
even though you can
specific,
say that the conscious experience is not exactly in the body, right? It's somewhere out there in the consciousness. I think this is a big contention point. But it's still a fact that I can't experience what another person
yeah,
is feeling or experiencing.
it's very
That's a
specific to
that's a
your,
very real boundary then,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's it. That's it. That's not valid.
It's a boundary of, yeah, you can't, I mean, maybe there will be a technology in the future where like we're talking about the telepathic communications or whatever, let's just say hypothetically, right? You can understand another person's point of view directly, but that does not constitute you know exactly how that person feels in the moment that he felt it, because that specific neuron configuration is just specific to that person. It's
Yeah.
almost like a fingerprint, right? Everybody have a specific fingerprint that's not nobody has the same fingerprint, right? So that is like a code, it's specific to that person. So you can't replicate it. It's a way of, because that takes what, a long time for that brain to formulate in that specific configuration, and you can't duplicate it. There's just no way physically so far to duplicate that. So you
Yeah.
can't
It'll be
experience
unique.
life like I'm experiencing everything from here, and you can't know how
Yeah.
it
So
feels or what it feels like, and
that's
vice
where this
versa,
fails.
right?
So
So
it's not just the mind, it's just the fact.
you can't just
There's
mind meld or whatever and become
yeah.
this one
No,
hive mind or whatever,
I
right?
don't have access to that. So that's a distinction, that's a boundary, and I mean, you can't say that mind is created because I don't know what is creating it, but it's there. Maybe mind is creating it, maybe, but that doesn't mean to anything about reality. It's just that's the fact. So let's see what the rest of it is. If the rest of it is going to be able to do anything with that, because it's getting into this final conclusion territory where subject and object are not ultimately separate. This is a big claim, right? The self is not independent from reality. Reality is not fully external to mind. Mind and world arise together with experience. Mind and world arise together with an experience. I don't know what that means. I don't know what these things mean.
Just words, man.
They're not ultimately separate. Yeah, sure. Ultimately, they're not separate. I'm born within an environment. That environment birthed me. I exist within that environment. I cannot exist outside of that environment.
I am part of the environment. I am the environment, right?
In that way, we're not separate, right? Everybody's everybody's environment. Okay. The self is not independent from reality. Biggest problem is with the world self. The self is what you consider. What is self?
Okay, this is getting way too big, bro. It's
No. That's the point. We need to finish it today.
okay. Well, I do have to go, man. It's
fuck you. You have to go.
Sorry,
You're gonna leave me in this existential
reality
crisis?
affects. It start affecting like what you're hoping for is not gonna.
God,
the reality is
do
affecting
another
it.
part on this.
You see, I have to do things in the real world now. What?
That's
why?
the reality?
I mean, I want to just be in this space right now.
But in my unseparated reality from you, you're staying here and talking with me for the rest of the night.
Yeah, so what
happened there,
what
bro?
Happened there?
Are you drawing a boundary on me, bro? What the hell? Are you being like, you're gonna separate this shit? Come on.
Yeah, within 5 minutes or whatever.
Oh my God.
No, I do have to take care of something. Yeah,
okay.
But damn, see, it affects the reality. God damn it. So the reality
doesn't care.
For your
God
mental exercise.
This whole freaking thing is just fell apart by actual
real quick
reality. But reality is like, what? It does whatever it wants, and it has nothing to do with me. Damn.
Oh, damn.
But I thought
bro.
I wasn't separate from reality.
Wow.
No,
that's a good lessons, I guess. Like, yeah.
That's a good junction point, okay?
Reality just intrudes right into our, space, It's like, yeah, but okay. I mean, this is interesting though. Like I guess I see where he's coming from.
I don't.
I mean,
I'm lost at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that. Okay, I see the direction of what this person is trying to get at.
Direction is there. I understand what he's trying to make seem like, but there's nothing to do with reality.
But it feels like a lot of it is kind of a stretching it, right? We're like, okay, he's having this theory that he wants to kind of put everything into this nice and explainable kind of framework, let's just say, right? Which nothing wrong with that. I mean, a lot of people have attempted, to do this, whether that's from a scientific point of view or from this kind of, spiritual realm. But isn't that what everybody's doing? Buddhism is trying to do it. It's trying to do it. Christianity, any religion, any sort of is trying to explain away.
Well, there will be people who say that they're saying the same thing. All
right.
Religions.
That could be right? But
which is again up for interpretation, right? Yeah, sure. One certain interpretation could make it that way.
I know that's the caveat. A lot of people don't like it. It's like, no, this is the truth. I'm telling you the truth. This is the way, But unfortunately, the reality is that, well, if you have any distinct in your mind, if you're using your mental faculty, you can understand that, okay, well, any of these sayings and theories and kind of, some of them are very complex too, right? They have their own kind of worldview systems and stuff like that. Okay. But so you could say the same thing as to somebody who have memorized the entire history of the 40K universe. Well, he is also very knowledgeable about a fictional world, and he can tell you
And they
anything
could take
about
it
that.
very seriously too.
And
yeah.
if you take it very seriously, you can actually.
I mean, I'm sure there are people in this world who genuinely believe in warp and the emperor and everything. Because they are
right?
just that much
Because you
into
can
it.
actually practice the actual religion that exists in the 40K universe. You can actually believe it. That can actually work. It can actually mentally you can go there. Okay, but that doesn't make it real in the way of applying to the reality that we are living in, right? There are many different ways to slice a cat. Essentially, you can say it's all simulation. Okay, that can be understood as okay, that possibly could be real.
Just
Or
theories.
you could say, well, we live in this world as far as we see. There's all this universe, Big Bang, blah blah blah. Okay, fine. And then at the end of the day, you still got bills to pay, right? It seems like you can't escape that reality, right? So all I'm saying is, it doesn't matter which one you believe, and as far as if it makes you better in any way, I don't see any problem with any of these, right? But just that you have to have a distinct mind enough to realize you don't want to get manipulated into something which you don't truly believe, right? If you truly believe in
And it's
something,
also like I don't think I'd be able to believe into anything like this, like full on 100%, because at the back of the whole belief part essentially makes me aware of the fact that this is like just pretend game that we're playing. And you can do it consciously, you can pretend a game, right? This is why when I was trying to take on Buddhism seriously, I told you, like, I'm still just approaching it as a little game that I'm playing. That's all it is, because there's no freaking way I'll be just like, yeah, this is it. This is it.
problem then is not true belief then, right? Which some would say, well, you're not being very faithful to the idea.
So.
But then you almost can't stick your foot halfway in, and then you can't be on two boats at the same time. Almost like you got to jump in full leap of faith, or
maybe
you don't believe it, right? It's almost like
that's the little caveat.
You can't be skeptical and then try to believe it. That's two different, it's almost like you have to be skeptical and not believing it and only treat it as a mental exercise or an interesting way to see the world versus I truly believe I'm going to achieve nirvana. I'm going to, like this is where I try to learn about Buddhism and the fact that some are saying, okay, so all Buddhism, no matter which sect, believe in reincarnation, and that's the cornerstone. Right? You have to accept that. If you don't accept that, you don't believe in Buddhism. Then I'm like, okay, then I don't believe in Buddhism. So, there are things like, they have tenets, they have these things. Okay, which one do you take? Right? I mean, you can have all kinds of sects that different belief, a little bit of different belief within it, but that's just human interpret
the
stuff.
Reincarnation is a big part of the mechanism because essentially it's part of the underlying logic for why you would want to practice it. Because there is some kind of something towards which your actions essentially add up to. So it's part of this is why I think a lot of these religions, they're just kind of exploiting human psychology. Yeah. This is why I think a lot of it is just manipulation to some purpose, right? To someone's purpose. This is why I wanted to answer that question, like why do people like this exist and what do they want? But we'll try to do it next time because I think we're almost there.
Because it requires a lot of different definitions and things you gotta. Because anytime you bring these things like the self, all these. You have to expand on that before you can even...
No, we're doing it we're doing it very casually for sure. But it's still a fun process. I really liked what we did today. It was kind of, I don't know,
This is an interesting mental exercise.
Yes, that's all I wanted
Test
to
your
do, is
own
just keep
kind
it
of
as a,
worldview
just
as
think
well,
about these things
right?
as like, how do you understand these things, all the things that are involved, all the actual claims, and just put them to the test for your own experience, your own ability to sit down and think, how does this compare to reality, right? How do the claims compare to reality that you can access and you've
Yeah,
been living
because
through for
I
the
do
decades?
feel like that's a good exercise to do no matter what, because it's almost like you're curious enough about all these religion and spirituality and see what these people think, because that can help you construct your own worldview. Because if you are so set on the thing, then you are blind to possibilities and things at which it might not be the case, right? There's so many cases of like we are all wrong in some ways about how we see the world or how we understand it. So I think with the open mind like that and going through,
Yeah, it's just a consideration. Like, what is this? Let's check it out.
yeah,
That's all it
there's
is.
nothing wrong with like, you're free to believe or not believe it. It's just like, okay, go through. Does it make sense to me? Okay.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
not. Because I remember this quote that's floating around the internet, right? You are not immune to propaganda. Like that saying is so true. Like it doesn't matter. It's scary too, because it's like at any moment, any information that I receive could be propaganda and I won't even see it. Right? You think you know. You think that, oh, I'm above propaganda.
But it's
Nobody can gonna
designed.
bamboozle me.
It's designed to
It
bamboozle
Yeah,
people.
because
That's the whole point.
the data set can't always fit a narrative. It can always make it be meaningful in some ways, to be explained in a certain way that you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then you're in. Then you're got hooked on, right? It doesn't matter which position you believe in. You're always possible that you don't have all the truth. You don't have, and this is the part people don't like. It's like, oh, I know who I am. You know, it's like I
Yeah, I
know
know
who
who
I
I
am.
am. I'm the dude who plays the dude who plays another dude.
But exactly, right? Sometimes that in itself, you think you're smart enough to recognize everything about all these tricks and stuff being played, but no. Sometimes it's so insidious that you're like, you think you know, but you're not. You're actually being played, right? But then you don't even realize it. That's the most insidious part. So I think this is the reason why we are doing this. It's like, I know it sounds like duh. Well, this is like basic, fundamental
But
like,
then, yeah, to the point of some of these ideas, what I like about it is that they do make a question at least, right? Which is, I think that's what the healthy thing is. Because a lot of the stuff, yeah, it's assumptions upon assumptions upon assumptions, which you never even questioned or are aware of. And they are running your whole framework. So, if anything, it's just valuable for that
because also
exercise.
like what this one has shown is your subjective experience is the only way by which you experience reality, right? It's always through your own
Yeah,
senses.
that's the part that I
So,
do like. That's the
which is
important part.
important that you do analyze and figure out things as much as you can, and don't just accept any information just by its face value, because you don't know the source of it. You don't know if this is manipulating you in some ways, or how it's being used, right? That's what happens in society. Any of this information is gonna if it get passed down, somebody had a hand in it. Whether or not there's malicious intent, there's always gonna be, even there's translation errors. There's gonna be errors of
Yeah, that's a big one.
translating the information, of conveying it, right?
That's why, like, people, like serious people in these endeavors, like they literally learn like Chinese and stuff, like where they try to understand the
That
actual texts, the original
yeah,
text that wrote it, to make sure that the meaning
is
is
correct.
like what they meant.
Yeah.
And I understand why it's done, because for sure, throughout time, throughout culture, throughout changes, stuff degrades, meaning degrades, and truth gets lost.
In the modern time, man, it's so hard with
Oh, it's going to be a
social
problem.
media, propaganda, everything about politics, about understanding
The
whatever it
whole
is.
history of everything might be rewritten, and future people will never know it.
And even already the past that we think we know of what happened, because
Yeah, that's what I'm
truth is
saying. Like,
always,
past will be
it's
just rewritten,
written
because
by
all
the
the records
victor.
will be digital and they will be
So
falsified and nobody will
I
know.
don't know, man. This timeline is crazy. I mean, you just gotta stay
Well,
on your
yeah.
toes, man. So
Yeah.
gotta stay
We should have
crispy.
stuck with pagers.
Yeah.
That's where we should have stopped.
Yep.
Pagers was nice, and that was
Yeah,
should have been done.
exactly. And at least we will still remember phone numbers. I mean,
Yeah,
god damn, I don't even.
exercise our memory.
At least I know my own number. That's the only thing I know.
That's the
Okay,
extent.
I don't know your number. I don't know my mother's number. I don't
And
know
the
anybody's
address.
number other than my.
And the address, yeah.
That's only because I use it for business. People call me, right? So I need to know. I need to tell them what my number is.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
dystopia.
Cap it at this. Don't go too crazy, and maybe in the next one we'll figure out the nature of reality. So
Yeah, don't
stick
do this
around.
at home. Let us professional do this, okay? I mean,
Professional.
that's right. We do this. This is what we do.
Right. Stay casual.